Chapter 4:16. When you see a person walking on the water like an immortal, you will generally feel particularly amazed. Not to mention other things, just the person's posture and manner of doing things at a glance, you can tell that he is an expert, the kind that is very high, at least a dozen stories high. However, if there was a flying sword pulling a rope in front of him, the image that had just been erected would immediately collapse. Ning Kaichen? Rinpoche immediately thought of this name. He was the only sword master that he knew. Moreover, sword masters were rare to begin with. At their peak, there were only a few hundred sword masters roaming the world during the Age of Chaos. Under normal circumstances, there would only be around 100 sword masters. In such a vast world, most people wouldn't even see a single sword master in their lifetime. Rinpoche quickly shook his head. It shouldn't be him. It was another sword master. Ning Tsiechen's but wasn't that high. Rinpoche touched his chin. He felt that his train of thought was a little off. The other party was very fast. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he arrived at the opposite bank from the middle of the river. He first stepped on the back of the wood, then flipped in the air and grabbed the front end of the wood with both hands. When he landed, he placed the piece of wood, which was about the length of a person, on his head. It was as if he was performing acrobatics and walked away. He didn't care about the 3 big ships here at all. His speed wasn't slow. He didn't even sway with such a big piece of wood on his head. Rinpoche smacked his lips and felt that something was wrong with this scene. It was a waste of his stunning appearance at the beginning. He didn't know why, but he had the urge to knock that piece of wood off his head. As for having a sword master in the same direction, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. He had long heard from Ning Kaichen that most of the time, sword masters were busy looking for various materials in the wild. Therefore it wasn't strange to see them here. When sword masters appeared in Dayo, their targets were the various mountain ranges in Dayo or the 60,000 mountains. For a moment, Rinpoche felt that he should suggest to the Empress that the land and mineral rights in Dayo belonged to the state and that treasures found in Dayo should be handed over in proportion. However, this idea was just a thought and wasn't practical. The rest of the journey was accompanied by heavy rain, torrential rain, and mud. There were more hills and vegetation on both sides of the river than in the vicinity of Lan City. The number of fields also began to decrease, replaced by large stretches of uninhabited dense forests. From time to time, the cries of birds and the roars of beasts could be heard. This dense forest was like a primeval forest. From the outside, one could see dense vines hanging down from the tree trunks. Occasionally, one could see a few monkeys or other animals climbing up and down. There was also a giant snake that was thicker than a man lying on the dirt road, lazily basking in the sun. These days, the meals were getting more and more sumptuous. Rinpoche ate a lot of meat that he had never eaten before, and this broadened his horizons. What is this? Ginseng fruit? During the break, a group of students ran into the forest to hunt for treasures. Not long after, they heard the roars of the beasts inside becoming more intense. Then he saw a student with a face full of scratches running back with 2 fruits in his arms. I'm just taking a look. When Rinpoche saw the unfamiliar fruit, he curiously went up to take a look. It was fist-sized, jade-white and sparkling and translucent. Like a shrunken head, its facial features were clear and distinct. One of them was crying and the other was laughing. There were even 2 leaves on it. Ginseng fruit. Rinpoche was surprised. This fruit really looked like a human face. It's the skullcap fruit. Is it delicious? It can eat a person's tongue. That student was very happy. This fruit was very rare and couldn't be found in Lan City. Even though his face was scratched by a few monkeys, it was worth it to obtain 2 skullcap fruits. Come, let me take a look. Rinpoche held the 2 fruits in his hands, looked at them under the sunlight, and then put them into his clothes. They're mine. That student's eyes widened when he saw Rinpoche's actions. I'll give you something good to exchange for them. Rinpoche grabbed a handful of white rabbit creamy candies from the bag hanging on his back and stuffed them into the student's hands. That student looked at the white rabbit creamy candies in his hands and then looked at the 2 bulging buns in Rinpoche's arms. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Peel off the skin before eating. Rinpoche reminded the student when he saw him throw the candies into his mouth in grief and indignation. Your Majesty, I found something good. Rinpoche happily carried the 2 fruits to the Empress to present. What are these? The Empress had never seen these things before. She was very curious when she saw the 2 fruits that Rinpoche took out. They're called skullcap fruits. Even though they look a little unique, their taste is said to be pretty good. Rinpoche passed the 2 skullcap fruits to the Empress and she threw one to him. Crunch, crunch. The Empress took 2 bites and the fruit was gone. It's indeed pretty good. The Empress nodded. Your Majesty, you should eat this too. I'll get someone to look for it later, Rinpoche immediately said. Forget it. It's considered delicious to eat it occasionally. I'll get sick of it if I eat it all the time. The Empress waved her hand. Rinpoche felt that these words could be applied to candies as well. However, he appreciated the Empress's good intentions. He took a bite of the fruit. It was fragrant, sweet, and tasty. His mouth was full of saliva. A burst of fragrance entered his brain from his mouth. He finished the fist-sized fruit in a few bites. The fragrance lingered in his mouth for a long time. Sure enough, he could even eat his own tongue. After finishing one, Rinpoche couldn't forget about it. Not long after, he saw many students returning. Each and every one of them was holding a small beast or a fruit in their hands. His eyes swept across everyone's hands. It was a pity that there weren't any Katsura fruits. Everyone, come over here. Rinpoche clapped his hands and called all the students over. One by one they looked to their left and right. They didn't know what he was going to do. Do you know about the Katsura fruit? Rinpoche asked. What is it? Most of the students didn't know what it was. Those who don't know can ask him. Rinpoche pointed at the student. Cough cough. 10 pieces of white rabbit creamy candies in exchange for 1 Katsura fruit. Rinpoche touched his waist and a handful of white rabbit creamy candies appeared in his hand. Most of the students still didn't know what this thing was. Are you trying to bluff a child? The little Lolita was grabbing the ear of a babe. It was a rabbit-like creature with a large body size and a mouth full of fangs. At this moment it was like a toy in her hands. That isn't as delicious as the Katsura fruit. The little Lolita curled her lips. Others might not have seen white rabbit creamy candies, but she entered the palace every day. Every time the Empress would throw a few pieces to her. Rinpoche muttered to himself. It seemed like it wasn't easy to fool her. 5 lollipops. Rinpoche inserted 5 lollipops between his fingers. It looked as if he had a few balls growing out of his fist. The little Lolita looked very conflicted. She was weighing whether 5 lollipops were worth 1 Katsura fruit. Teacher, what if I don't want the lollipops? Du Laolu immediately raised his hand. He wasn't a child. How could he possibly like this kind of thing that kids liked? Give me 3 points for the final exam. It will be counted as bonus points for social practice. Rinpoche decided to use his trump card. When he said this, most of the students' eyes lit up. After all, they didn't know what white rabbit creamy candies and lollipops were. However, the bonus of 3 points for the final exam was still very tempting to them. Seeing that everyone was motivated, Rinpoche added, the final exam results will be posted in front of the school. By then your family will know about it. At this moment, everyone revealed an eager expression. Chapter 417. Your Majesty. Rinpoche gave her 2 Katsura fruits, and the Empress gave him another one. Rinpoche felt that this was a good habit. There weren't many Katsura fruits. During their break every day, as long as it wasn't raining heavily, the students would go to the forest to hunt for the Katsura fruits. However, they only brought back 6 Katsura fruits at one time. At the very least, there were 2 Katsura fruits. Rinpoche only found out at this time that the Katsura fruits grew in pairs. Generally, a tree could only grow 6 Katsura fruits at most. Because of this output, the number of Katsura fruits was very small. This made Rinpoche feel somewhat regretful. However, there was good news, at least for the students. According to this progress, the full score for the final exam should still be 400 points. To encourage them to continue searching for the Katsura fruits, Rinpoche told them a piece of good news. The top 3 students in this year's exam would be rewarded with a certificate of merit. They could paste it on the wall at home. It was high-end and classy. These were the top 3 students in the Black Bamboo Academy and represented a glorious future. These words weren't completely deceiving them. After all, they were the first batch of students and could be considered high-level intellectuals in Dayo. Those who could get into the top 3 would be put in an important position in the future. Of course, even if they couldn't get into the top 3, they would still be put in an important position. Not only for this batch but also for the next few years. Dayo had a huge shortage of talents. From the central government to the local governments, they lacked a lot of talents. Especially in order to advance the technological development of Dayo, a small number of such talents wouldn't be of much use. Along the way, besides Katsura fruits, there were all kinds of novel things that he hadn't seen in Lon City. For example, there was a 3-foot-long strange snake with a bump on its head. At first, Rinpoche thought it was a flood dragon. Later on he found out that this snake was called Shixia. It liked to appear in the evening, so it was called Shixia. After the bump on its head was cut open, a jelly-like red substance came out. It was called Dan Hong. It was said that eating this substance was very good for nourishing the spirit. A guard handed this substance to the Empress and she threw it to him. It tasted like jelly, but the taste was a little lighter. As for the reaction after eating, there was no reaction at all. However, after he finished eating, the metal chain drilled out from the top of his head and coiled around his body again and again, wrapping him up like a cocoon. After the initial shock, the Empress immediately laughed out loud. After all, it was rare for her to be tied up by the iron chain in her brain. With a smile on her face, she watched as Rinpoche fell to the ground and rubbed against it like a big bug. At that time, Rinpoche felt like cursing. I was hoping that you would be able to tie others up in the future, but I didn't expect that you would be tying me up instead. What use do I have for you? Prior to this, Rinpoche had always felt that as long as he attained the spirit wheel level and was able to use this metal chain, he would at least be able to have more fun, such as tying things up. But reality proved that this iron chain was even more of a scam than he had imagined. Thinking about it, if he were to fight someone in the future and this thing tied him up, he wouldn't be able to die in peace. Unfortunately, this metal chain had already taken root in his mind. Before he reached the spirit wheel level, there was no way to remove it from his mind. Your Majesty. In the end, Rinpoche looked at the Empress innocently for help. After the Empress was done laughing, she grabbed one end of the metal chain and shook it. Immediately, the metal chain retracted as if it had been electrocuted. What he didn't know was that after he finished eating the Dan Hong, there was a slight change in his sea of knowledge. This change made the metal chain feel uncomfortable, so it drilled out and tied him up tightly. Along the way, not only did he see all kinds of rare fruits and strange beasts, but he also saw some villages and towns. Even some of the styles and habits of the villages and towns were somewhat different from what he had seen before. For example, as he went further south, many villages and towns liked to decorate the surface of their houses with all kinds of feathers, making them look colorful and extremely beautiful. As for the aboriginals in these villages and towns, their foreheads were slightly larger, their appearances more ferocious, and their strength was also slightly higher. It seems to be a little different from the north. As these characteristics became more and more obvious, Rinpoche began to have doubts. There are a lot of Haishan people here, the Empress said faintly and explained in detail to Rinpoche. The so-called Haishan people was the name of a region in the 60,000 mountains. The aboriginals in the north should be called the Yenta people, and they all moved here from the periphery of the 60,000 mountains. The so-called Haishan people lived in the deeper regions. Not only were there Haishan people, but there were also the Akayu people and the Shuyans people. In the 60,000 mountains, there were also many kinds of aboriginals. Most of them were villages in a large area and were named after this area. The Yenta people were called the Yenta people, and the Haishan people were called the Haishan people. The Akayu and Shuyans people were the same. Chapter 418. Rinpoche used to love bathing. Even though the northeast had geothermal heat, it was cold outside. In the winter he would soak in a bathhouse and enjoy a sauna, which made him feel refreshed from head to toe. When he was in university, a roommate from the south entered the bathhouse and saw everyone's bare buttocks. He was so scared that he almost ran away, which made him laugh at him for a long time. Rinpoche sat in the wooden tub. The water reached his neck and the smell of Chinese herbal medicine wafted out of the tub. He didn't know why, but he suddenly thought of that classmate from the south. He heard that when a person started to recall the past, it meant that he was getting old. Rinpoche was deep in thought. The person who said this probably didn't experience youth. I'm only 24, 25, 26. How old am I? It's already 2019 on Earth and more than half of it has passed. I should be 26 years old, right? According to my experience, I should only be 25 years old. Whether I'm 25 or 26, I'm still at the prime of my life. Haven't you heard of the ancient saying? The age of a cardamom. I'm not even 28 years old and it's too boring to think about this. After soaking in the tub for a while, he estimated that the time was almost up. The medicine had been absorbed into his body, and the water was starting to turn cold. He then climbed out of the tub. He stood there naked, looked down and shook his body. Then he picked up a towel to wipe his body and put on his clothes. There's a thick wooden stake moving outside the courtyard? A thick wooden stake was swaying outside the courtyard as if it had a spirit. Who's there? If Rinpoche could see it, so could the guards. The two guards immediately jumped onto the wall. I'm here to see Sir Rinpoche. A familiar voice came from outside the wall. It sounded like a man but also like a woman. In fact, Rinpoche knew who it was when he saw the swaying wooden stake. He just didn't expect the other party to want to see him. It just so happened that he was also very interested in the other party. Let him in, Rinpoche said while putting on his clothes. As Rinpoche finished speaking, the two guards pointed their chins at the person outside the wall and glared at him. Then a person jumped onto the wall with a wooden stake and landed on the ground. Sir Ren. That person cupped his hands from afar and said, "Long time no see." Rinpoche looked at the other party's appearance. She was dressed in purple, her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were a little pink, which looked like eyeshadow. Her appearance could only be said to be above average. The most important thing was the charm at the corner of her eyes and the tip of her eyebrows. It was not something that ordinary people could compare with. After hearing what that person said, many of the guards glanced at Rinpoche with a face full of gossip. Did the victim's family come looking for him? I didn't expect Sir Ren to have such a past. I wonder if I should let Her Majesty know. To be honest, Sir Ren treated them pretty well, but the truth couldn't be concealed. Rinpoche? He felt as if a bucket of sh*t had fallen from the sky onto his head. Rinpoche felt that he probably didn't know this woman. But for some reason he felt a sense of familiarity. The tips of his eyebrows and the corners of his eyes looked familiar. You've seen it before? What's your relationship with Ning Kaichen? Rinpoche was a little puzzled. This woman reminded him of Ning Kaichen. Ning Kaichen has sisters? But I haven't seen it before, right? I bet you didn't expect this, Sir Ren. The other party winked at Rinpoche. Rinpoche got goosebumps when he saw the other party's actions. You're Ning Kaichen? Rinpoche turned pale with fright. He hadn't changed in a few months. How did he change his gender? Although he knew that the medical skills in this world were more advanced, he didn't expect it to be at this stage. He could even perform this kind of surgery. This is the reason why I'm here to look for Sir Ren. Ning Kaichen pinched his thumb and middle finger. Although I'm ashamed to see anyone with my current appearance, I'm still old friends with Sir Ren. I hope Sir Ren can help me out. Ning Kaichen's eyes were full of desire as he spoke. What's going on? Have you finally realized your childhood wish? Rinpoche asked someone to bring 2 stools over and place them 3 meters apart. Ning Kaichen's current appearance made him feel weird. Sir Ren, please don't tease me. Ning Kaichen was slightly distressed. It's a long story. Ning Kaichen sat on the chair, but the pillar was still above his head, not moving an inch. His tone and expression were full of charm. He was even more feminine than a real woman. Make it short then. Rinpoche immediately stopped him when he saw that Ning Kaichen was going to give a long speech. Rinpoche had always remembered Ning Kaichen's habit of bragging. Even if Rinpoche ignored him, Ning Kaichen would still ramble on for a long time. If Rinpoche allowed him to ramble on, he reckoned that he could brag from now until midnight. Then it would really become a long talk by candlelight. With Ning Kaichen's current appearance, he would be hung by the Empress to dry. Ning Kaichen looked as if he couldn't bear to recall the past. He thought for a long time and tried to organize where to start. Rinpoche looked at his expression and simply asked, "Did you want to become like this?" Of course not. Ning Kaichen immediately shook his head. How could he want to become like this? I see that you are enjoying it, Rinpoche couldn't help but say. Ning Kaichen immediately looked at Rinpoche as if he was looking at an enemy and said, I have already become like this, yet you still tease me? In any case, we are old friends. Back then we even spent the night together in the wilderness. He didn't forget to pinch his thumb and middle finger as he spoke and spoke in a flirtatious tone. The surrounding guards looked at Rinpoche with an extremely gossipy gaze. Some of them were already prepared to snitch on him to the Empress. Rinpoche was speechless. Back then you met a pack of wolves, okay? If it wasn't for me you would have been fed to the wolves. Rinpoche selectively ignored the fact that he was the one who blew up Ning Kaichen with a grenade. Many thanks for saving my life. Do you want me to repay you with my body? Ning Kaichen continued to throw flirtatious glances at him. No, if it wasn't for me you would have been eaten by the wolves. Because of this, my green bead was seriously injured. Ning Kaichen reacted after finishing his sentence. His face turned pale and his voice became coarser. It sounded like his previous voice. However, he still didn't forget to pinch his thumb and middle finger. These days it has become more and more serious, Ning Kaichen said miserably. Following which, his voice became androgynous again. It's useless to talk about the past. We finally have a relationship, which is why I'm here to see Sir Ren. When he said the last sentence, his expression became flirtatious again. His voice also became androgynous. Following which, his expression became distressed again. Sir Ren, I Ning Kaichen can't thank you enough for helping me this time. I will definitely repay you handsomely. Rinpoche looked at Ning Kaichen with an embarrassed expression. One moment he was me, the next moment he was me, and the next moment he changed his expression. His voice was sometimes coarse and sometimes soft. Was he schizophrenic? Chapter 419. Recently, there has been an organization whose core members are sword masters. Someone has been issuing missions and giving out rewards. As you know, our sword master is often out searching for all sorts of resources. Now that an organization like this has appeared, many people can complete missions to obtain the materials they want. It's much more efficient than traversing the mountains to search for them. I don't know who is so generous to include most of the sword masters through such an organization. Ning Kaichen continued to act like a schizophrenic. One moment, he was charming, and the next, he reverted to his original expression with a bitter expression. Is your current state related to this organization? Rinpoche finally looked serious. Ning Kaichen wouldn't have mentioned this organization for no reason. Ning Kaichen became so miserable in just a few months. It must be related to the secrets of this organization, right? Was this organization plotting to conquer the world? This was what happened in novels and movies. Which world was it plotting to conquer? Great Xia? Rinpoche could only say that he was happy to see this kind of thing happen. Did that organization lack a staff officer? Rinpoche felt that he was qualified to be a useless advisor. He would be the mastermind behind the scenes while a group of sword masters subverted Great Xia. It's okay, close the door and send the guest off. Rinpoche was waiting to hear the secret, but Ning Kaichen's words made him feel as if he had eaten tea-flavored chocolate. I can't say that it's okay. In fact, I took on a mission but something went wrong and I was drugged. Ning Kaichen quickly explained. Then why did you spend so much time talking about what organization you are from? Rinpoche's eyes weren't looking at him at all. Didn't I explain it clearly? Ning Kaichen felt that he was innocent. Was it wrong to ask for help and explain it clearly? Doesn't the organization have any confidentiality agreements? It sounds like a secretive organization. Rinpoche continued to stare at him. No. It's an organization that helps each other. Some people need help, some want to exchange materials, and some want to find the materials they want. Ning Kaichen explained. Rinpoche felt that his plan to be a useless advisor had failed before it even started. Actually, I think it's good for you to be like this. As the ancients said, it's good to be a woman. You see, the clothes that women wear are much better than men's. If you want to wear men's clothes, you can wear men's clothes. If you want to wear women's clothes, you can wear women's clothes. If you want to wear women's clothes, you can wear women's clothes. If you want to wear men's clothes, you can wear women's clothes. Ning Kaichen, besides, women can be willful and unreasonable, and no one will find it strange. There's a saying, don't try to reason with a woman. You see, women can be willful, men can't. Oh? Really? This sounds interesting. The Empress's cold voice came from behind Rinpoche. But your Majesty is different. Your Majesty is the treasure of this world. How can you be the same as those ordinary women? Rinpoche's expression didn't change at all. After he finished speaking, he turned to the Empress and asked, Your Majesty, why are you here? The Empress sneered at him. I heard that an old friend is looking for you. I want to see who this old friend of yours is, the Empress said faintly. Others didn't know Rinpoche's background, but she knew it the best. Greetings, Your Majesty. Ning Kaichen cupped his fists and said, It's inconvenient for me to move around. I hope Your Majesty won't take offense. As he spoke, he even winked at the Empress. Have you seen people curling up their pinkies when they cup their fists? Ning Kaichen was doing this now. Those who didn't know would think that this cupped fist had a special meaning. Take him away and behead him, the Empress said faintly as she looked at him. Throwing flirtatious glances at me? Courageous. Since he is so courageous, then behead him. Upon hearing this, Ning Kaichen's face turned green. Your Majesty, please forgive me. I have my difficulties. This time I'm here to ask for help. Furthermore, I have generous gifts for you. Your Majesty, he's Ning Kaichen, Rinpoche said softly from the side. He couldn't watch the Empress behead him. The Empress thought for a while and felt that this name sounded familiar. The one who told you about the Lien family. Previously, he came to your birthday celebration as well, Rinpoche added. The Empress finally remembered. Following which, she looked at Ning Kaichen with a strange expression on her face. If she didn't remember wrongly, he was a man, right? For a man to become like this, even she felt awkward. After all, cross-dressing big shots weren't popular in Dayo. It's a long story. Ning Kaichen began to sigh. Make a long story short. Rinpoche's face was full of spirit. This guy really didn't know what was good for him? Recently, an organization appeared. The core members of this organization are sword masters. Someone issued a mission inside. This organization has nothing to do with him becoming like this. Rinpoche timely interrupted. Ning Kaichen rolled his eyes at Rinpoche with hidden bitterness. Then he was drugged. The person who drugged you was an enemy, right? Since he could turn you into this, why didn't he kill you? Rinpoche finally asked this question. He said that he's a good person. All living beings are fated to come to this world and have the luck of heaven. Killing people is against the harmony of heaven. As such, he never kills people. I've never heard of him killing people. Rinpoche pondered and felt that it was better to just kill him. I seem to have some impression of him. Jutsishim? The Empress asked. There weren't many people who acted so strangely and had such strange methods. Even if the Empress didn't pay much attention to the outside world, she had more or less heard about it. Ning Kaichen said faintly, "That's him." "Then why are you here?" Rinpoche asked. "I heard that there's something called the Luoyin root that can cure my current condition. This thing can only be found in the 60,000 mountains. I'm afraid that it will be difficult to find it if I go in alone. Therefore, I want to exchange it for an item." Ning Kaichen finally got down to business. "I have a shueka that I originally wanted to use to exchange for a few materials in the future. I'm willing to use this item to thank you. This item has no other effects, but it can greatly increase one's qi and blood. It's very beneficial for practitioners and can save at least 10 years of hard work. It can be considered a rare treasure." The Empress became serious when she heard about the shueka. She had heard of this item before. It was one of the rare treasures that could only be found by luck. Although it wasn't very useful to her, it was very useful to Rinpoche. Rinpoche's cultivation required all kinds of medicinal herbs, so his cultivation speed was much faster than that of ordinary people. Although this item couldn't help Rinpoche save years of hard work, it would definitely get twice the result with half the effort. Previously, Rinpoche consumed Lu Chi's Spirit Yuan pill to replenish his vitality and improve his aptitude. If Rinpoche practiced ordinary martial arts, that Spirit Yuan pill would have a miraculous effect. However, for Rinpoche's Rui visualization, the effect wasn't as great as expected. This shueka was just enough for Rinpoche. This Luoyin root is also something that can only be found by luck. Although it's said to exist, very few people have seen it, the Empress said. Naturally, she wanted the shueka, but it wasn't easy to find it. It's best to find it as soon as possible. I feel that I'm becoming more and more sentimental these days. Ning Kaichen looked charming. Although he was a man, his facial expression and tone were even more seductive than a woman's. A few guards were weighing whether to snatch him back and make him their wife. The Empress's eyes drifted to the side. Based on his behavior, why not just kill him? Rinpoche looked embarrassed and said, "You may need this." "What?" The Empress turned to look at him. Ning Kaichen's eyes were about to emit peach blossoms. Electric shock therapy. Using a weak, short, and moderate amount of electric current to stimulate the patient's brain to achieve the goal of controlling the patient's mental symptoms. Rinpoche felt that given his current situation, it was necessary to give him an electric shock. Maybe he would be cured? In any case, it couldn't get any worse, right? "Wait, I'll go look for it," Rinpoche said and hurriedly ran to the carriage outside. Many of his things were packed in boxes in the carriage. If he remembered correctly, there should be an electric baton there. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Rinpoche ran back excitedly with a short and thick baton. This treasure hadn't seen the light of day for a long time. "Sir Ren, what are you doing?" Ning Kaichen exclaimed, then said flirtatiously, "Aya, it's so thick zap." Rinpoche directly placed the electric baton on Ning Kaichen's arm. Chapter 420. Slave, 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 slave. Rinpoche poked Ning Kaichen's body with the electric baton for a few seconds before withdrawing it. Ning Kaichen was already lying on the ground. He had experienced being shocked by an electric baton before and naturally knew how it would react. It would probably take a while for him to recover. "Your Majesty, what is shueka?" Rinpoche asked after she sat down and attentively moved a chair over for the Empress. When Ning Kaichen mentioned shueka, the Empress was obviously moved. "I'm not sure either. I've only seen it in a book. This thing is very useful to you. After consuming it, you will be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort," the Empress said faintly. Rinpoche's heart warmed. After all, the Empress wanted it because it was useful to him. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The Empress rolled her eyes. Even though it was just an ordinary eye roll in Rinpoche's eyes, it was amorous and made his heart palpitate. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. An ordinary woman could become beautiful and attractive in the eyes of her lover, let alone the Empress. Is that useful? The Empress felt that the electric shock therapy mentioned by Rinpoche wasn't very reliable. She also discovered Ning Tsaichen's current condition. It was obvious that there was a problem with his spirit. Fortunately, he was a sword master and all his strength was in the sword. If a spirit wheel expert became like him, he would be half crippled. However, a spirit wheel expert wouldn't be reduced to such a state. Zhu Cixing had been a spirit wheel expert for decades, but his strength hadn't improved at all. It seemed that his inability to improve had something to do with this method. This method hurt both others and oneself. Even though it didn't kill anyone, it cut off the path of others and himself. Maybe it might be useful? Rinpoche was a little uncertain. He heard that psychiatric hospitals often use this method. Professor Yang, the Lightning Dharma King, relied on this method to make a name for himself. Ning Kaichen obviously had a mental problem. There were no psychiatrists in this world and Rinpoche was treating him like a dead horse. What if luck worked? Maybe. The Empress tilted her head and looked at him, then at Ning Kaichen on the ground. Finally, she looked up at the sky and squinted. Today was a rare sunny day. Ning Tsaichen's life or death had nothing to do with her, and she didn't care either. She just wanted to know if he really had a solution. Rinpoche squatted in front of Ning Kaichen to check on his condition. Just now, Rinpoche had been in a trance for 3 to 4 seconds. Seeing that his eyes were focused, he asked, "Are you feeling better?" After a long time, Ning Kaichen finally regained consciousness. However, his entire body was sore and numb and he was almost unable to move. What a powerful rod. My body has turned soft. Ning Kaichen had just regained his senses when he saw Rinpoche with a face full of flirtatious expressions. He looked at Rinpoche with a heart-shaped gaze. Sizzle. When Ning Kaichen said the last few words, Rinpoche expressionlessly struck him with the stun baton again. Everyone in the surroundings looked at Ning Kaichen with a look of astonishment on their faces. After trembling for a while, Ning Kaichen lay down on the ground. "My lord, you're so awesome, your servant. Sizzle. I like Huan so much. Sizzle." Oh. Sizzle. Rinpoche quivered and jabbed the stun baton again. After an afternoon, Rinpoche looked excited and started to gain some confidence. "It seems to be effective?" The Empress nodded in agreement. "It's working, but it's getting worse." In the original version, the character was alternating between a man and a woman. This time it was always a woman. Rinpoche pondered for a while. In the past, he was suffering from schizophrenia, alternating between a man and a woman. Now he had simply transformed into a woman. From a certain point of view, it did have a certain effect on schizophrenia. Forget it, let's stop the treatment for now and see how he'll be after he wakes up. At the very least, he needed some time to observe the effects of the treatment to see if it would still change between male and female. If he was no longer a man and a woman, then he would at least be half cured and his schizophrenia would be cured. As for the other half, there was nothing he could do. After a long time, Ning Tsaichen's gaze regained its focus. "How do you feel?" After Rinpoche finished speaking, he almost poked the electric baton again. He was already used to it. "I've never felt so good," Ning Kaichen said in a gentle tone. "The ancient saying is right. Being a woman is actually quite good." The ancients, Rinpoche, the Empress, many guards, everyone looked at the electric baton in Rinpoche's hands as if they had seen a ghost. This time he was finished. Initially there was only a small problem, but after Principal Ren's treatment, he completely transformed into a woman. Speaking of which, I still have to thank Sir Ren. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't know what I want. Ning Kaichen continued. Rinpoche's face was full of vigor. His treatment was considered a success, right? It should be a success, right? The most important thing for a person is to know what they want and work hard to achieve it. Otherwise, wouldn't their life be a waste? Rinpoche encouraged him. Ning Kaichen replied, "Sir is right." The Empress and many guards looked at Rinpoche with a strange look in their eyes. Ning Tsaichen's transformation was already awkward enough, but Rinpoche was actually able to talk to him? Rinpoche was a little nervous. After all, Ning Kaichen was considered an acquaintance. Now that he had become like this, he should be fine, right? Rinpoche looked around and saw that everyone was looking at him with a strange look in their eyes. He coughed twice and said, "Your Majesty, it's getting late. Let's have our meal first." I will come back to check on him after dinner. After dinner, Rinpoche strolled back to the courtyard. Ning Kaichen had already gotten up from the ground and was sitting on a stool at the side. His head was slightly lowered as he combed his hair with his hand. How do you feel? Rinpoche asked from a few meters away. I feel very good. I will never forget Sir Ren's great kindness. Why don't I repay you with my body? Stop. Rinpoche was shocked and quickly shouted. If you want to repay me with your body, you'd better be dragged away and beheaded. I'm just joking. Sir Ren is so excited that I'm a little hesitant. Rinpoche had goosebumps all over his body. He felt that he had really gone overboard this time. It was really comfortable just now. I will never forget that feeling. I only hope that Sir Ren will use that thing to ravage me again. Ning Kaichen raised his head and his eyes were glistening. If it was someone who didn't know him, based on his tone and demeanor, he would really think that he was a beauty. *CK. Rinpoche couldn't help but curse. He had really gone overboard this time. Ning Kaichen had actually become like this. Chapter 421. When Rinpoche, the Empress and the rest moved forward, Ning Kaichen had already left. He said that he was going back to retrieve the Shueka and wanted to exchange the stun baton with Rinpoche. Ning Kaichen might have fallen in love with the stun baton or the feeling of being electrocuted. Looking at Ning Kaichen drifting away with a flirtatious look on his face, Rinpoche thought that this might be a good thing. He had found his own value and his beloved stun baton. In the future he would be able to roam the world alone with a stun baton. How carefree would that be? How many people in the world knew what they wanted until they died? They lived one day at a time. Furthermore, an ancient person once said that great souls were hermaphrodites. That should be correct, right? This showed that Ning Kaichen now had a great soul. Witnessing such a thing with his own eyes made people tear up. Furthermore, his schizophrenia was cured. Every medicine had its side effects and it was normal for the treatment to have some side effects. It was just that the gender perception was a little different. As long as the person didn't object, it would be fine. Looking at Ning Kaichen, wasn't he quite happy? No objection? Pretty good. Rinpoche was relieved, but the rest couldn't. They looked at Rinpoche as if they had seen a ghost. Seeing such a half-man half-woman completely turn into a woman, this kind of ability was too terrifying for the burly aboriginal men. What if he turned them into a half-man half-woman? They subconsciously wanted to stay away from Rinpoche. They didn't know how Rinpoche turned Ning Kaichen into this. They only saw him poking him with a blue stick from time to time, and he became like this after one afternoon. It was really terrifying. Yagwe, I heard that you turned a man into a woman? Tong Lan ran over to ask Rinpoche after hearing about this. There were many students looking from afar and seemed to be very concerned about this answer. Do you want to try too? Rinpoche had a malicious look on his face. The little Lolita looked at him with disdain and hesitated for a long time before saying, Can you turn me into a man? What? Rinpoche was surprised. He had never heard of the Tong family valuing men over women. Why would Tong Lan have such an idea? The Aboriginals' women weren't weak and weren't weaker than men. Therefore there was no such thing as valuing men over women. Just look at the fact that there are even women among the big shots in the imperial court. However, because women were naturally meticulous and patient, there were more of them in the Ministry of Revenue and less of them in other departments. I heard that House Yunyan is quite fun. I wanted to go there for a long time, but Grandpa wouldn't let me. He said that only men can enter. No matter how intelligent she was still a 10-year-old child. Sometimes she still had childish thoughts. Rinpoche, this was definitely a lack of family education, a lack of parental care, and a decline in social morality. This method of mine is a little flawed. There's a high chance that I'll become a half-man and half-woman, but I won't be able to enter the half-man and half-woman either, Rinpoche said in distress. Bah, so useless. Tong Lan had a look of disappointment on her face. She didn't want a half-man half-woman. This fellow was indeed unreliable. While everyone was still on the road, two things happened. The first was that the winged cavalry and Li Qianxiu's troops successfully returned with the help of Hong Wu. Just as expected, the interior of Great Xia was empty at this time. The military power had been drawn out, and other than some experts from the martial world, there wasn't much resistance. However, those experts from the martial world and a portion of the garrison were like sand castles in front of the winged cavalry. With a gentle push, they turned into a pile of sand. A total of 5 cities were wiped out, and the entire Great Xia was shaken. However, there was one thing that wasn't as expected. When they went, they planned to let them rob enough gold and silver to return. In the end, when they returned, more than half of what they had was food and more food. Most of it was consumed on the way back. Fortunately, they brought back a batch of gold, silver, and jewels. Furthermore, they had robbed them from wealthy families and should be worth a lot. They could replenish the national treasury and at least support the construction of the highway. This army had left behind an illustrious reputation in Great Xia. Wherever they went, they would eat everything up, eat everything up, eat everything up. This was something that they didn't expect. Within Dayo, there wasn't much meat that could satisfy their needs. Most of the time they had to eat vegetarian food for 6 meals a day. After all, there was a large amount of vegetarian food, it was difficult to transport, and it wasn't able to fight hunger. As a result, every city collected livestock and used these grains to fill their stomachs. As a result, starvation broke out wherever this army passed. Not only did this army run amok in Great Xia, but it also caused panic in many nearby cities. This caused a huge uproar in Great Xia, and Great Xia was badly battered in order to provide relief to the commoners in these 5 cities. After the departure of the Dayo army, hundreds of thousands of commoners from the 5 cities and the surrounding villages rushed into the surrounding cities, causing some chaos in the surrounding cities. The reason for the chaos was because of food. After all, most of the rations used by Great Xia to support the 700,000 soldiers were transferred from the nearby cities in the south. Many of the city's granaries used for disaster relief were already empty. When such a thing happened, they were unable to take out any rations that could be used for disaster relief. They could only rely on the officials to contact some wealthy families to provide porridge. There was also the notice that Ren Baqian asked Li Qianqiu to put up. Although it seemed like a joke to many scholars, Dayo still dared to ask for compensation? Furthermore, it was directly said when they came to rob. It was as if someone fought with you, beat you up, and demanded that you pay him 100 taels of silver. If you didn't pay, you would be robbed from your house. What was the difference between this and bandits? However, resentment arose in the hearts of many commoners. After all, they had lived a peaceful life, but in the end they encountered a disaster and had to leave their hometown temporarily. This kind of bone-piercing pain caused resentment to rise in their hearts. To Dayo and to Great Xia, the return of Li Qianqiu and the winged cavalry was one thing. The other thing was that the entire family of the warlord of Qingfeng City had been exterminated. The Department of Inspection had snatched some precious treasures from his residence and had already returned to Dayo. They were currently rushing to the Protectorate of the South to hand over the treasures to the Empress. Both of these things were good news. Although the value of the treasures hadn't been calculated, it wouldn't be too low. It would be enough to start some construction work after returning. At this moment, Ren Baqian was standing in the Empress's imperial carriage. He lifted the curtains and could already see the army that was lined up and waiting in formation. There were thousands of fierce-looking, bald, burly men who were bare-chested and only had a piece of animal skin wrapped diagonally from his left shoulder to his right waist. They looked more like bandits than an army. However, Dayo's army was like this and they were used to it. This time they finally arrived at their destination. Chapter 422. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was probably because he hadn't had a cold or a fever in a long time that he had forgotten what it felt like. These few days he had thought that he had a mild fever and didn't even take fever medicine. He just took some cold medicine every day. After a few days he couldn't take it anymore yesterday. In the middle of the night he started taking Pisces pain tablets. This could stop the pain and reduce the fever. Today, when he went to the doctor to take his temperature, he found out that it was over 38 degrees Celsius, and that was after taking the medicine. In other words, his temperature had been over 39 degrees Celsius for the past few days. He had to send his son to the hospital every day in temperatures that were over -20 degrees Celsius. He had to queue up for injections and aerosol treatment twice a day for 4 to 5 hours. He didn't notice his own condition at all. He had always thought that it was a low fever within 38 degrees Celsius. No wonder he felt so bad. His physique was too good. He hadn't had a cold or a fever in a long time. He had forgotten what it felt like and didn't take it seriously. If he had known earlier, he would have been fine after taking the fever medicine. Thinking about his condition these few days, he couldn't bear to look back. Also, the flu this time was really bad. Even with my physique, I got infected. Chapter 423. Ren Baqian hadn't seen many different kinds of people and things in this world. All he had seen and come into contact with were basically aboriginals. Then there were the foreign merchants in Lan City and the people who came to celebrate the Empress's birthday at the Honglu Bureau. No matter how poor Lan City was, it was still under the rule of the emperor. In particular, the merchants at Jingdao were all from big and influential families. They more or less put on airs and didn't have much of a market atmosphere. After arriving at Valley City and walking out of the mansion that had been arranged for them, they saw many shops and stalls of all shapes and sizes. Moreover, most of them were foreign merchants and remnant citizens of the Hao Nation. There weren't many aboriginals here. Beside Rinpochen was a young aboriginal called Feng Ting. Like the other aboriginals, he was bald, had a fierce-looking face, had a body full of strong muscles, and was twice the width of an ordinary person. This was the guide that Shiwangu had arranged for him. After all, Rinpochen and his bodyguard were unfamiliar with this place. Most of the people live in the mountains. They set off in the morning and will only arrive here at noon. There aren't many people now, but there will be more in the afternoon, Feng Ting explained to Rinpochen. Rinpochen knew that the people he was referring to were the aboriginals. As for the people from other countries and remnant citizens of the Hao Nation, they weren't included here. Just like how the people from other countries rejected the aboriginals also rejected them. Set off in the morning and arrive at noon? It's not too far away, Rinpochen said as he looked at the few aboriginals around him. There's a big city called Nanhuang to the south of the Great Basin. It's more lively there and has a lot of good stuff, Feng Ting said. The goods sold here were mainly oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and cloth for the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation. Other than that, they also bought herbs and animal hides. They were mainly targeted at commoners and didn't have a lot of good stuff. In Nanhuang, it was mainly targeted at the aboriginals in the 60,000 mountains. Every day, many villagers brought the things they found in the mountains to Nanhuang City to sell and exchange. It was extremely lively and had a lot of good stuff. It was even livelier than Lan City. After all, there were limited ways to store things in this world and many things couldn't be stored for a long time. The journey to Lan City was also very long, and it would take at least 20 days. If it was a convoy, the speed would be even slower and it would take more than a month. Some gems and minerals were still fine, but some rare fruits would have already rotted by the time they reached Lan City. There were also some strange beasts that were on the verge of death after leaving the environment of the 60,000 mountains. When they reached Lan City, not many of them could survive. Back when he participated in the Great Hunt, he saw some strange mounts. Basically, they were mutants that had been captured from the 60,000 mountains and sent to Lan City, and they survived. The Empress didn't care about these things, but the second and third generations of the Aboriginal officials were very fond of them. Riding on them would also make them look good. However, there weren't many of them. Along the way, Rinpochen occasionally chatted with Feng Ting. Most of his attention was on the shops and pedestrians on both sides of the road. After walking for some time, Rinpochen gradually recognized the differences between the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation and the merchants from other nations. The people of Great Xia were usually more arrogant. After all, they were backed by the most powerful nation. These few days when Great Xia attacked, the merchants were all captured. However, they couldn't go back either. These few days, the war between the two nations had temporarily ended, and these merchants were able to travel freely again. After all, they had just lost a battle. However, they were also different from the merchants of the Yun Nation and the Qin Nation. The merchants of the Yun Nation were very extravagant. Whether it was their attire or the utensils they used, they were all more exquisite. Each and every one of them welcomed people with a smiling face and scolded behind their backs. What the Aboriginals hated the most was this kind of thick-skinned behavior. The merchants of the Qin Nation were characterized by their dark skin. They were dark, skinny, small, and ugly. Even after moving from the Yun Nation to the Qin Nation, perhaps it was due to the fact that people were born in different places, but they still exuded a sense of pettiness. Simply put, the temperament of the people of these three nations was very different. As for the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation, they should actually be called the Shanyang people. It was said that they first migrated from a place called Shanyang. Later, as they multiplied and the commoners of Great Xia who couldn't survive continued to migrate over, they merged together and developed. There wasn't much difference in appearance from the people of Great Xia and the Yun Nation, except that their foreheads were more prominent and their eye sockets were slightly deeper. There were also many differences in their clothing. These remnant citizens of the Hao Nation wore a small blouse on the upper body and a pleated skirt on the lower part of the waist. There were slits on both sides, and one could inadvertently see their hairy legs through the slits. Both men and women were dressed like this. The most important thing was the hatred hidden in their eyes. Although they didn't show it on the surface and buried it in their hearts, it couldn't be hidden. Their nation was destroyed, ruled, and tens of millions of people were kept in captivity in a basin. It had been 71 years, and this hatred had almost penetrated deep into their bones. In particular, when they saw Rinpochen, they were astonished and amazed. After that, The hatred in their eyes seemed to be even stronger than when they looked at the aboriginals, which made Rinpoche feel very puzzled. He had never dealt with them before. In fact, it wasn't difficult to guess their thoughts. They were kept in captivity, but Rinpoche had infiltrated the aboriginal court with aboriginal guards. They were both outsiders, but they were treated differently. Furthermore, Rinpoche was the husband of the empress and had contributed to the war with Great Xia. Although they didn't know the specifics, they more or less heard some rumors in this place where merchants from various nations gathered. Even in their dreams, they wanted Great Xia to drive those barbarians back into the mountains. Even if Great Xia became the master of this land in the future, they would still be able to live freely. However, Great Xia lost miserably. It took 71 years for Great Xia to send out their troops, but they were defeated miserably. How could Rinpoche, who played a major role in this, not be hated? If he were an aboriginal, they would have added this kind of hatred to all the aboriginals. However, he wasn't. He was also an outsider to the aboriginals. Come here. Rinpoche waved at a man not far away. That man lowered his head and hurried away as if he didn't hear him. Capture him, Rinpoche said faintly. Even a blind man could see the hatred in that man's eyes when he saw him. He touched his waist, hesitated for a moment, and then let go. A guard went over, grabbed the back of that man's neck, and dragged him over. What are you doing? That man struggled and shouted. Search your waist and see what's on it, Rinpoche said softly as he supported his chin with his finger. Following which, a knife made of bone was handed to Rinpoche. Want to kill me? Rinpoche held the bone knife with 2 fingers and looked at it calmly. This bone knife was rather sharp and was about 1.5 feet long. These people from the Hao nation stuffed the bone knife into their skirts and placed it close to their legs so it wasn't easy to see. No, sir, you have misunderstood. That man lowered his head and asked. He was surrounded by aboriginal guards, and even if there were another 100 of him, he wouldn't be able to hurt Rinpoche. He wasn't a fool and naturally knew what to say. Why? Rinpoche asked doubtfully. I have never seen you before, so I don't think we have any enmity. Sir, you have misunderstood. I wouldn't dare. Whether it's a misunderstanding or not, it's not up to you to say. I feel that if you want to kill me, you will be courting death. Rinpoche ignored his words and said. He felt that he wasn't mistaken. The other party's eyes were filled with hatred, and his hand was placed on his waist, where the knife was hidden. Looking at Rinpoche with hatred in his eyes and such an obvious action, Rinpoche was treating him as a fool if he said that he didn't have any intentions? Actually, I quite like to see people hate me to death but can't do anything to me. However, I want to know why they hate me so much that they can't help but touch their knife even in front of so many guards, Rinpoche said softly. There's a reason for every action. Don't tell me that you are afraid of seeing so many people and want to touch your knife for a sense of security? That person immediately said, Sir, I just thought of something and wanted to touch my knife to see if I brought it out. In the end, I realized that I didn't bring it and wanted to go back to get it. Well, that makes sense. Rinpoche nodded. That person heaved a sigh of relief. However, I don't believe you. Bring me back and interrogate me for a few days before I consider whether I believe you or not. Rinpoche waved his hand at the guard. That person's expression changed drastically. If he was tortured for a few days, would he still be alive? What's the point of considering whether you believe me or not at that time? Many people in the surroundings also looked in this direction. After hearing this, they lowered their heads and hurriedly left, not daring to look again. These days, Shiwanya had been killing and many people were trembling with fear. They only dared to bury their hatred in their hearts. Looking at this situation, everyone knew that this person wouldn't be able to live. In fact, Rinpoche had more or less guessed it. Perhaps not everything, but he could guess a little. He walked around the streets for a long time, and the gazes he saw made him feel that it wouldn't be easy to get any information from them. It was better to do something simple and direct. This time, I'm here to do a good deed and to save the lives of all of you. With your petty tricks, sooner or later the Empress won't be able to endure it. Now you can be excluded. Sacrificing one of you or a few more will bring happiness to millions of families. I will erect a monument for all of you later. Don't say that everything was a human life. He wasn't a saint, nor was he a monk. He didn't pay attention to the equality of all living beings. Killing 1, 10, 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 innocent people would allow 100,000, 1 million, or even 10 million people to obediently submit to Dao's rule and contribute to the modernization of Dao. That would be his goal. To put it bluntly, Rinpoche also knew that it was impossible for him to not kill people. Chapter 424. The so-called torture of the Aboriginals wasn't torture, but torture. These guys couldn't play such tricks. In the 60,000 mountains, they were fighting against the heavens and the earth for their lives. They didn't have the mood to do such things. In their opinion, killing people was just a matter of nodding to the ground. If they didn't like it, they could just kill them. They didn't have so many tricks up their sleeves to torture people. Even if they left the mountains and established a nation, it would only last for a few decades. They would be extremely poor, and there were other countries eyeing them covetously. They didn't have the time to think about such things. The scaly whip was dipped in salt water, and with a shake, the scales exploded. It tore off a piece of flesh from the back. Even the Aboriginals would have to lie in bed for a few days after being whipped 3 times, let alone ordinary people. 3 lashes would leave them half dead. The people who were captured weren't tough, but it didn't matter even if they were. Rinpoche could capture them again with a call. In Rinpoche's heart, these Hao Nation immigrants had nothing to do with him. After the war, they were just numbers in his heart. He had seen many dead people, and it didn't matter if a few more innocent people died. Where there were people, there would be conflicts. If there were more than one person, there would be differences in status. If there were more than 2 people, there would be gangs. This was the case even among the Hao Nation immigrants who were kept in captivity. Not only were there differences in status, but there were also conflicts in sections. This was what Rinpoche learned in the past few days in Gu City. There were 67 big and small cities and hundreds of sects in Tianjin Basin. Back then, the rebels took the Hao Nation immigrants into the basin and divided them into various powers. There were also many conflicts between them. The most ordinary people were naturally the ordinary people. Above them were the army and the sections. The army belonged to the big powers and the sects belonged to the small powers. There were conflicts between the sects, and there would be disciples who entered the army to wield power. There were 3 main forces in Tianjin Basin, and each of them governed dozens of cities. Moreover, these 3 forces were not as united as a piece of iron. The leaders of the rebel army, big and small, had become city lords and city officials in the blink of an eye. There weren't many soldiers, only about 200,000. After all, the Protectorate of the South was watching, and they wouldn't sit back and watch them grow. Moreover, they had also changed their names. They used the name of the City Defense Army, and there were only a few thousand to 10,000 of them scattered across each city. After all, they still belonged to Dayo. The imperial court could still tolerate a few thousand soldiers guarding a city. However, if they established their own army, then they wouldn't be able to tolerate it. That would be the path to their deaths. Back then, those rebels had been beaten to the brink of death. Now they only dared to play some tricks under the table. Naturally, they didn't dare to stir up trouble in public. If they stepped out of line, even the agreement from back then wouldn't be able to protect them. As for the sects, although there were more than 100 of them, their overall strength was not strong. Some of the stronger ones escaped from Dayo and went to other nations. The rest were either weak or couldn't bear to leave their homeland. Although there were still some experts left, they couldn't raise any waves. Moreover, Shiwanya was still keeping an eye on them. From time to time, if he discovered any signs of trouble, he would pull out a group of people to be sacrificed. A few days ago, when they fought with Great Xia, they killed tens of thousands of people. Rinpoche stayed in Gu City for a few days. Other than the information he obtained from the few remnant citizens of the Hao Nation, he also obtained information from Shiwanya. Although he hadn't entered the basin and didn't see it with his own eyes, he had a rough idea of the situation there. He just had to go in and see it with his own eyes to verify the information he had obtained. Rinpoche closed a booklet that contained some of the things he had sorted out over the past few days. After leaving the room, he turned into a few courtyards and heard the sound of stringed instruments coming from another courtyard. Upon entering the courtyard, he saw a man and a woman playing a bamboo musical instrument. It was somewhat like a flute, but it was only the length of a palm. The sound wasn't as desolate and resentful as the flute, but it still had a unique flavor. The Empress was eating fruits in her room. Beside her was the candy tree. Wherever the Empress went, the tree would be planted. Rinpoche was even prepared to install a frame under the tree and install 4 wheels. "How is it?" the Empress asked when she saw him striding in. "I have to go and take a look to find out," Rinpoche replied softly. He sat beside the Empress, took a fruit from the plate and took a bite. It melted in his mouth and tasted sweet and delicious. These were all good things that Shiwanya had sent to the Empress. "When are you leaving?" The Empress's eyes lit up. She was also bored of staying here. She wasn't interested in the things that Rinpoche did. She came out this time to see what those fellows who were protected by Dayo were like. On the other hand, she wasn't willing to be separated from Rinpoche for a few months. "I'm afraid that I will have to split up with your Majesty," Rinpoche said. If he were to travel with the Empress, he would be a big target and was afraid that he wouldn't be able to see anything. The Empress was a little disappointed, but she knew that this was a serious matter. Your Majesty, do you want to go back with me? I will set off after I return, Rinpoche asked. Previously he had said that he wanted to see Chi-Jeyu, but these days, he had been on the road and the Empress hadn't followed him back to Earth. He actually wanted to settle this matter quickly. In the end, he also had an idea of what to do. He would kill those who needed to be killed so that he wouldn't have to worry about her. Then let's go and take a look. The Empress nodded and instructed Qin Yuan and Hong Luan. With one hand holding Rinpoche's wrist, the two disappeared from the room. After a while, Qin Yuan and Hong Luan went out to let the two people who were playing outside leave. After returning to Earth, the two of them changed their clothes. At this time it was the end of midsummer and the weather was very hot. Rinpoche actually wanted to ask the Empress if she wanted to go for a swim. He couldn't forget about this matter. Thinking about the Empress in a swimsuit, it really made him excited. However, there was still a serious matter at this time. Your Majesty, do you still remember the person that I mentioned previously who looks like you? Rinpoche asked. I'm somewhat interested, but since you want me to see him so much, I'm afraid that there's something going on. The Empress smiled and looked at him. Every time she returned here, she could always relax a lot. Here she wasn't the Empress of Dayo. There is indeed. Rinpoche nodded. However, I need your Majesty to take a look first. All right. Seeing that he was serious, the Empress nodded. Although he was usually not a serious person since he said that there was something going on, then she really had to go and take a look. Your Majesty, a new phone. Rinpoche wasn't in a hurry to leave. First he took out something from the hands behind his back. It was a red phone. Is it a little different from the previous one? The Empress looked at this phone. It was slightly narrower. When she held it in her hand it was actually soft. It's indeed different. Rinpoche held the Empress's hand and wrapped the phone around her wrist. It was as if she had an additional watch. It's all like this now. Rinpoche smiled and said. With the emergence of the flexible screen, this type of phone had become a new technology. In fact, it had already appeared 2 years ago, but it was only now that it was on the market. It's indeed convenient. The Empress nodded. Let's go. Rinpoche pulled the Empress to the car and drove away. After a while, they arrived at the entrance of SH University. When they were at the villa, he checked the date and compared it to Chi-Jiyu's class schedule. She should be in class today. The two of them walked into the campus. This kind of ivory tower was different from society. It was much simpler. Students coming and going were holding books, and it was filled with an academic atmosphere. Is this Zixiao's first time coming to a university? Rinpoche held the Empress's hand and walked on campus like a couple. It's indeed my first time. The Empress nodded her head. Previously, Rinpoche had brought her to elementary schools. She had seen how those 10-year-old children were studying in school. Now that she looked at the university again, it was indeed somewhat different. This made her extremely envious. Fortunately, Dayo had its own school now. Even though there weren't many students, they were seeds that would sprout sooner or later. The two of them walked on campus. The Empress's appearance and temperament were eye-catching no matter where she went, let alone these ivory tower students who were fantasizing about love. The Empress's eyes almost popped out when she saw the Empress. She thought to herself, there's actually such a girl in school? Why haven't I heard of her before? However, looking at the hand that Rinpoche was holding, she couldn't help but curse in her heart, all the good cabbages have been taken by pigs. Chapter 425. As the bell rang, there was a commotion in the school building. Students started to run out of the building. As more and more people came out, Rinpoche's gaze searched the crowd. The place where both of them were standing wasn't considered too remote. The field of vision was good and everyone could see them. Especially when they saw the Empress, many of them were surprised and felt that she looked inexplicably familiar. After all, some of these students were Chi-Jiyu's classmates. They are out, Rinpoche said faintly when he saw a face in the crowd. Although the face was almost the same, when Rinpoche saw the lady in the crowd, his gaze was very cold. The Empress followed his gaze and saw the lady who looked similar to her. A strong killing intent emanated from the bottom of her heart. She raised her eyebrows, her hair fluttered without any wind, and the surroundings became colder. It's a very strange feeling, the Empress said coldly. At this moment she knew why Rinpoche asked her to take a look. Rinpoche could feel the murderous aura from her body. He wasn't surprised at all. I felt the same when I saw the seventh prince. Is there a connection? The Empress could hear the hidden meaning in his words. Perhaps there is a connection that we don't know about. Rinpoche didn't know what the connection was, but he knew that this kind of killing intent wasn't without reason. While the two of them were talking, Chi Jieyu also felt something and looked in their direction. When she saw the Empress's face, she was stunned. Then she couldn't hide the shock on her face and stopped in her tracks. When her classmates saw her reaction and noticed this, they were all surprised. "Don't kill here," Rinpoche said softly when he felt the Empress's killing intent getting stronger. Those days when he just came back from the battlefield, his killing intent was too strong, and he was somewhat demonic. These days of peaceful life had reduced his killing intent by a lot. This time he could control himself and remember the promise he made. Chi Jieyu walked towards the two of them, looked at Rinpoche and asked doubtfully, "This is?" She always knew that she was very beautiful, and it wouldn't be surprising if she met someone prettier than her. However, she didn't expect to meet a lady who looked so similar to her and had a better temperament than her. Compared to her, although their looks were very similar, she was a Cinderella, and the other party was like a princess. She had an urge to become like him. The aura of the other party and the feeling of being superior made her feel an indescribable sense of envy and jealousy. Rinpoche carefully looked into her eyes and indeed saw the hostility in them. However, she was just an ordinary girl and wouldn't have the same immediate killing intent as him and the Empress. Indeed, it's very similar. This world is really wonderful. Rinpoche smiled, but no one could tell that he was indifferent just now. "Did you come all the way here just to find me?" Chi Jieyu hid her thoughts and asked with a smile. "You could say so." She heard that someone looked like her, so she came to take a look out of curiosity, Rinpoche said with a smile. "Now that I've seen it, it's time to go." Chi Jieyu didn't know how to reply. The Empress's appearance made her feel very uneasy. She had forced herself to squeeze out that smile just now. "Let's go." Rinpoche held the Empress's hand. Before he turned around and left, he nodded at Chi Jieyu and said, "Goodbye." He was afraid that if the Empress stayed any longer, there would be a murder in this university. Chi Jieyu stared blankly at the two of them holding hands and leaving. She even forgot to ask about what Rinpoche told her previously. He said that she would meet those people, but she hadn't met them even after a few months. She originally wanted to ask, but now she had forgotten about it. "How is it?" Rinpoche leaned back on the seat and turned to look at the Empress. "It's very strange. I want to kill her." The Empress looked a little doubtful. She was different from Rinpoche. She was the fifth most powerful expert in the world, and she had always controlled her state of mind very well. It was very strange that a stranger could make her feel like killing. She wanted to find out the reason more than Rinpoche. "You said that you felt the same way when you saw the seventh prince of Great Xia?" the Empress asked. "Yes, the seventh prince must have felt the same way," Rinpoche said faintly. "When I saw her that day, I felt like killing her. At that time I didn't know why. Later on, I found out that you have a trace of soul in my body and knew that she has the same connection with you." "Do you have any thoughts?" the Empress asked. "A little." Rinpoche nodded his head and told her what he thought at that time. There was a movie in the past that had an interesting concept. There were countless versions of himself in countless parallel worlds. Every time he killed one of them, he would become stronger. "After the seventh prince died, did anything change in your body?" the Empress asked. "I entered Rui visualization a few days after the seventh prince died. I don't know if there is any connection between the two." Rinpoche wasn't very clear about this matter, but he was afraid that there might be some changes in his thinking. This was because he entered Rui visualization on those 2 days. It was too coincidental. The Empress was silent for a long time before saying, "Keep her alive, don't let her die. She might be useful when I want to break through to the cardinal heaven level. I have this feeling." The Empress was already at the peak of the cardinal heaven level. If she broke through again, she would reach longevity heaven, which was the strength of the first emperor. After the first emperor reached everlasting heaven, he left with his ministers and powerful army, never to be seen again. Rinpoche was slightly worried after hearing what the Empress said. "How long do you need to break through?" 3 to 5 years if it's fast, decades if it's slow. The Empress wasn't sure either. She was still one step away from reaching that barrier. She wasn't sure how long this step would take. Decades is more than 100 years on Earth. I can't protect her for that long. Even her bones won't be left. Rinpoche laughed. He then asked, "If you reach longevity heaven, will you leave Dayo? Like the first emperor?" The Empress was silent. After a while she said, "I don't know what happened. Maybe I will only know when I'm there. If you want to leave, remember to bring me along." Rinpoche held her hand. It was delicate, soft, and his tone was sincere. The first emperor didn't come back, and I don't know if he's dead or alive. None of the people who went back then came back. I'm afraid there's a great danger inside. I've said it before. Even if I'm in hell, I'll look up at the sky to see you. Rinpoche put his face next to the empress's cheek. The empress thought that he wanted to kiss her and was moved by his words. She didn't expect him to just gently rub against her cheek. Both of their cheeks touched and felt each other's warmth. The empress's fragrance also reached Rinpoche's nose. Both of their hearts were filled with tenderness. Your Majesty, you have to wait for me. If you break through, I'm afraid we won't know when we can get married and have children. Rinpoche retracted his head and said with a smile. The empress was a little embarrassed and slapped his hand. Rinpoche touched the back of his hand, which was red and swollen. He got used to it. However, he really had to hurry up. If the empress really broke through, then he really didn't know when they could get married. He didn't know how long it would take for Ning Tsaichin Shueka to arrive. Not only did he have to reach the earth wheel level, but he also had to reach the spirit wheel level. Otherwise, how could he keep up with the empress's footsteps? He hoped that the empress would slow down a little. He hadn't built Dayo into what she wanted it to be. However, if she was too slow, he was afraid that Chi Jayu wouldn't live that long. He had to put in more effort. Chapter 426. Both of you came at the right time. I'm going out for a while. Why don't you come and take a look together? Yang Sen stood up when he saw Rinpoche. Does it have anything to do with us? Rinpoche asked. A little. Let's talk on the way, Yang Sen said. Yang Sen spoke after the three cars had driven out of the underground parking lot of the Messier 87 building. Speaking of which, this matter doesn't have much to do with the two of you. Instead, it has something to do with the cultivation method that the two of you brought. Following Yang Sen's narration, Rinpoche found out about something interesting. A man-wheel expert had appeared on Earth, a true man-wheel expert. Furthermore, he was an outsider and had to train hard to reach this level. One had to know that Earth did not have systematic cultivation techniques like the other world. Although there were also people who cultivated Taoism, Buddhism, or martial arts, they walked a completely different path. Due to the limitations of the environment, it was difficult for him to achieve too much. After Rinpoche took out the martial arts manual, a group of such experts broke through to the man-will level in a short period of time. However, this person had read extensively, summed up the experiences of the predecessors, and after many years of hard work, he created a set of martial arts that could allow him to attain the man-will level. This was something that not many people could achieve. From this point alone, this person could be considered to be extremely outstanding. The problem was not this but something else. This person had been training hard for many years and broke through the limit in one fell swoop to reach the man-will level. He was full of mettle and thought that he was the #1 expert in the world. He thought to himself that since ancient times, no one could surpass him. Based on the foundation of his predecessors, he had taken a huge step forward in his cultivation method and reached a new realm. He had trained hard for decades and was invincible in the world. He couldn't possibly continue to hole up in the mountains, right? If one does not return to one's hometown after becoming rich, it is like walking at night in brocade clothes. This person had been holding back for decades, so he naturally wouldn't act like this now. Instead, he was preparing to become famous overnight. He sent out hero invitations to the so-called Wulin people and set up a challenge to meet all the heroes of the world. If it was just based on the advancement of his cultivation method, it was admirable. Unfortunately, he was a little too arrogant. Hundreds of experts who had attained the man-wheel level through the techniques provided by Rinpoche were ready to surround and kick him. A certain person had trained hard in the deep mountains for dozens of years, and when he came out, he thought that he was #1 in the world. In the end, the outside world had changed and even a child had such strength. That was roughly what it meant. It was very graphic but also very unlucky. If Rinpoche hadn't provided him with the martial arts, he would have become famous overnight and everyone in the world would have recognized him. Even in history his name would be recorded. Unfortunately, Rinpoche didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This person was indeed somewhat tragic. However, Yang Sen didn't let Rinpoche and the Empress follow him just to see him. Instead, he looked at the people that the country nurtured. After all, their previous accumulations had already been exhausted after they entered the man-wheel level, so their cultivation speed would be very slow. He had long wanted to get pointers from Rinpoche and the Empress, but the two of them often didn't go to Messier 87 for a few months. This time around he took this opportunity to pull them over. This was especially so for the Empress. She came from a blessed land, and her strength far exceeded the limits of a human. If she could give him some pointers, he would be able to avoid a lot of detours. After understanding Yang Sen's thoughts, Rinpoche turned his head and looked at the Empress. He saw that she was in a daze and did not know what she was thinking about. Rinpoche reckoned that she was still thinking about Chi Jeyu. After driving for about 2 hours, they finally arrived at their destination. It was a villa district. There was a very large courtyard in front of a villa in the corner. In the middle of the courtyard was an arena that was surrounded by many people of all ages and genders. Some of them were holding weapons wrapped in cloth. From the shape, one could roughly tell that they were sabers or swords. There were also some that were wrapped so tightly that one couldn't tell what they were. One of them was a middle-aged man in a traditional Chinese suit. He had short hair and looked very energetic. His eyes were extremely lively when he closed them. Yang Sen led Rinpoche and the Empress down, and someone immediately led them to the side to sit down. Director Yang. The people nearby greeted him in a low voice. Their voices weren't loud. After all, Yang Sen was an official, and it wasn't good to make a big fuss in this kind of place. After waiting for a long time, a group of people came out of the villa. One of them was tall and had a square face. His eyes were extremely lively, and he had a slight smile on his face. This person stood in the crowd and was the most eye-catching. Everyone sat down in the arena. Just now, someone went up to the stage to speak. Today many people have gathered here. I believe it's because of the recent news. Senior Bai has mastered the martial arts of various sects and has finally taken another step forward on the path of the predecessors. After listening to the first 2 sentences, Rinpoche started to feel a little bored. To put it bluntly, he was just bragging about his own achievements and then opening up the arena to meet the heroes. Will Senior Bai publicize this kind of martial arts? Someone in the surrounding crowd suddenly asked. As soon as this was said, a group of people immediately followed suit. After all, these people weren't here to fight in the arena, but to find a way to break through the limits. The person on the stage smiled faintly before continuing. If other people obtain this kind of martial arts, they naturally wouldn't publicize it. However, as the founder, Senior Bai is magnanimous and doesn't care about sectarian bias. He is willing to publicize his many years of painstaking efforts and compile the martial scripture, together with everyone. Following that, there was another uproar. Many people were asking what exactly this meant. It turned out that this time, not only did this person invite the heroes, but he also wanted to invite them to compile the martial scripture, together with the martial arts of various sects into it. As soon as this was said, the people below the stage immediately hesitated. Senior Bai, as the world's most powerful person, is willing to publicize this kind of martial arts and compile it into the martial scripture. Could it be that everyone still wants to retain the sectarian bias? That person on the stage asked. The world's most powerful person? Who admits it? Someone suddenly shouted from below. When Rinpoche heard this, he finally perked up. Finally, there was going to be some excitement. He didn't come here to watch them have a big meeting. That so-called Senior Bai wasn't angry after hearing this. He stood up from his seat and the joints in his body cracked. Then he flashed and landed on the stage. His graceful movements attracted a lot of cheers. We can talk about the martial scripture later. This time, I invited everyone because I want to see the experts of this world. I wonder who would like to come up and have a look? The middle-aged man on the stage said in a clear voice. In his heart, he calculated that no matter what, there would definitely be objections. He would first show his martial arts on the stage and let them see it. Then the rest would be much easier to discuss. He was still confident in his own martial arts. It wasn't that he looked down on the heroes of the world. In his eyes, except for him, everyone else was mediocre. I'll go. Immediately, someone jumped onto the stage. My name is Yang Huai and I'm just a nobody. I want to see what the so-called world's most powerful person is capable of. The person who jumped onto the stage was a man in his early 30s with a very vigorous aura. Cough cough. Yang Sen, who was drinking tea below, immediately coughed when he saw the person who jumped onto the stage. He whispered to the side, "You should at least let him win 2 rounds. Why is he the first to go up? You can't slap him in the face like this." Previously, this Bayuha was very arrogant. Yang Huai has been suppressing his anger for a long time to teach him a lesson, the person beside him whispered. When Rinpoche saw Yang Sen's reaction, he immediately knew that this was a nurtured expert. At this moment he was in high spirits. After all, he was also a man-will expert and he really wanted to see what the other man-will experts were like. Especially on Earth, he grew up reading wuxia novels and wuxia movies. He had always been curious about martial arts such as Xingyi Quan, Liuhe Quan, Taiji Quan, and Baguazhang. Chapter 427. Rinpoche focused his attention on the stage and waited to see the standard of the two. Although he wasn't very strong, he still had some eyesight. After all, in Dayo, spirit wheel experts were everywhere, and earth wheel experts were inferior to dogs. He had seen many people with such strength, so his eyesight had also improved. Yang Huai didn't reveal anything when he jumped onto the stage. It was obvious that he didn't want his opponent to see his standard and was aiming to slap him in the face. Bayuha was indeed fooled. Number 1 in the world. Although it's a compliment, I think I'm worthy of it. Bayuha smiled. Although his tone was plain, the arrogance in his words couldn't be concealed. After all, he had advanced the martial arts of the predecessors by a huge step. This was something that many people couldn't achieve. Just this point alone was enough for him to be proud of. Unfortunately, he was wrong from the start. Times had changed. He had stayed in the mountains for decades to practice the peerless martial arts, but he fell behind the times the moment he came out. We'll know after we try. Yang Huai stood opposite him and said. Everyone below was attentively waiting to see the match between the two. Both of them cupped their fists and greeted each other. This was etiquette. No matter what they thought, they still had to have basic etiquette. Martial ethics and etiquette had always been a part of traditional culture and were deeply ingrained in everyone's bones. After greeting each other, Bayuha stretched out one hand and got into a half stance. He was waiting for his opponent to attack. He had made up his mind to win this first match beautifully. If both of them fought for half a day and barely won, he wouldn't be able to show off his skills. Seeing his stance, Yang Huai moved his feet and punched his opponent's chest. This punch whistled through the air and Bayuha was shocked. He couldn't see anything before, but from this punch he could immediately tell that his opponent's strength wasn't much weaker than his. How is this possible? Bayuha was shocked. He had reached this stage through deducing techniques and believed that he was far superior to the practitioners of today. How was it possible that someone who jumped onto the stage was at the same level as him? However, he didn't slow down at all and immediately exchanged blows with his opponent. The two of them exchanged a few blows and everyone below became nervous. Whether it was speed or strength, the two of them were far superior to everyone else. The people below admitted that if they were the ones up there, they would probably be defeated within 2 blows. Although the strength of a man-will expert was only at the standard of an ordinary person in Dayo, it was actually far superior. One had to know that the strength of a man-will expert was between 500 to 1,500 kilograms. Some gifted individuals could even exceed this amount. This is the strength of the arms. Previously, both of them had a much better foundation than Rinpoche. After attaining the man-will level, their strength was now around 700 to 800 kilograms, which was far beyond what an ordinary person could compare with. In terms of speed, they were much faster than ordinary people. Ordinary people would not be able to see their movements clearly. For a time, they could only hear the sound of their bodies colliding. It was within everyone's expectations that Bayuha possessed such strength. But the fact that Yang Huai, who had suddenly jumped onto the stage to challenge him, had such strength was beyond everyone's expectations. Immediately, many people started asking around. Which sect did this person come from? Who was his master? How could no one have heard of such an expert? Many people started to rejoice in Bayuha's misfortune. Bayuha had just ascended the stage, and he had already encountered such an expert. This was going to be interesting. Their physical fitness was about the same. What mattered now was the level of their punches and kicks. Although Bayuha was a little arrogant, his wisdom could be seen from the fact that he was able to advance the martial arts of his predecessors by a huge step. Not only was he proficient in martial arts, but his punches and kicks were also extremely skilled. After exchanging 7 or 8 blows, Bayuha's arm was like a huge spear as he blocked Yang Huai's crotch, sending him flying off the stage. Good skills. Bayuha only stopped and praised Yang Huai after sending him off the stage. Let me try too. The other person immediately jumped onto the stage and asked, Do you want to take a break? Bayuha cupped his fists and said, Let's begin. As the two of them exchanged blows, Bayuha's face immediately turned strange. This person's strength was actually about the same as his and wasn't any weaker than the previous opponent. Where did these two experts come from? Bayuha guessed. What made him even more puzzled was the other party's strength and speed. He had only reached this level after breaking through that boundary, so how did they achieve it? After another 7 or 8 blows, Bayuha threw his opponent off the stage. Without waiting for him to catch his breath, another person jumped onto the stage. "Let me try too." Bayuha was speechless. This person's strength was actually about the same as his, and the difference between them was actually only in terms of punches and kicks. They were actually about the same in terms of physical fitness that he was most proud of, which allowed him to break through the boundary. How could he not be shocked? Previously, when the first and second people were fighting, he thought that they were exceptionally talented and would walk the same path as him. However, when 3 people like them jumped onto the stage consecutively, he began to feel that something was wrong. Not only did he feel that something was wrong, but the others also felt that something was wrong. These 3 people were all young, around 25 to 30 years old. Moreover, judging from their moves, they were obviously not from the same sect, yet they all had such strength. How could the audience not be suspicious? When the 4th person jumped onto the stage, Bayuha began to ponder what exactly went wrong. When the 4th person was beaten off the stage, he had no choice but to rest on the stage for a while, and his expression began to fluctuate. He believed that his achievements had already surpassed those of his predecessors and far surpassed those of his generation. As soon as he left the mountain, he couldn't wait to challenge the outstanding heroes. He didn't expect 4 such experts to come up one after another. Were there too many experts in this world, or was he too weak? What exactly was going on? He began to doubt himself. Could it be that something big had happened in the outside world, that someone had already broken through to this level and announced it? However, as far as he knew, such a thing hadn't happened in the past few days. But what was going on now? After he had rested enough, a 5th person jumped onto the stage. This person was actually slightly stronger than the previous 4. This time the 2 of them exchanged 30 to 40 moves and he barely won by 1 move. Then a 6th person jumped onto the stage. Bayuha's face turned ashen. It wasn't that he couldn't beat them. He thought that he was already the number 1 expert in the world after breaking through to this level. He didn't expect that a few random people who jumped onto the stage would all be this strong. Was the world changing too quickly, or was he ignorant? Could it be that everyone in the outside world was this strong? Wasn't his actions a joke? He wasn't the only one who felt this way. The audience felt the same way as well. They weren't blind, and they could naturally tell that the people who were fighting on the stage were stronger than them. It was easy to understand if 1 or 2 of such people appeared, but when so many of them appeared at once, they began to wonder if they were useless. The nation had nurtured these people through Rinpoche's martial arts. This time they only wanted to give Bayuha a slap in the face, but they didn't expect that they would destroy the confidence of Bayuha and the others. "This person isn't bad," Rinpoche whispered to young Senator. It was already very impressive that he was able to create a method to break through to the man-will level by integrating the methods of the predecessors. After all, creating a new path was the most difficult. Such a person wouldn't be lost in the crowd no matter where he went. If it wasn't for Rinpoche's martial arts, he would probably be able to advance the martial arts on Earth by a huge step. Moreover, he was also very good at fighting. Indeed, he's not bad. Yongsan nodded. This kind of talent needed to be absorbed into the nation. Even though he asked Rinpoche and the Empress to help look after the others, he himself was here to observe Bayuha. However, before absorbing him into the organization, he still had to destroy his arrogance. At this moment, Bayuha had beaten the 8th person off the stage, and a self-deprecating look appeared on his face. He originally thought that he was the number 1 expert in the world, but he didn't expect that any random person would be at his level. What was the point of fighting? Perhaps even a 10-year-old child would jump out and be as strong as him. Thinking back to his decades of hard work and the ecstasy he felt from every step he took, he thought that this was the scenery of his journey to the peak. Now, looking at it again, it seemed like a joke. It was better to go back to farming. He fought 8 matches and won 8 of them. However, this self-proclaimed number 1 expert who had trained hard for decades was the first to despair. Chapter 428. I don't want to fight anymore. Bayuha looked at the 9th person who jumped onto the stage with a face full of despair. There was no need to fight anymore. What? Are you afraid? The 9th person who jumped onto the stage was a woman, and she looked at him coldly. I've made a fool of myself. It turns out that I'm just a frog at the bottom of a well. I'd better return to the mountains. Bayuha ignored her and waved his hand at the crowd. Everyone could see his desolation. It was better to return to the mountains to farm. This time it was better not to go down the mountains. The so-called martial arts were just a joke. Everyone was like this, but he was still complacent and thought that he had reached a level that his predecessors couldn't reach. These 9 people made him completely lose interest. Even if he defeated the 9th person, there would still be the 10th, the 11th, the 100th. In fact, after the first person appeared, there was no longer any value for him to compete. The crowd below didn't have much of a reaction to Bayuha's words. This was because, apart from this group of experts trained by the nation, the others were also deeply doubtful. They doubted whether they had lived their entire lives as dogs. When did this world become like this? Their martial arts were even worse than Bayuha's, and they were extremely moved when they heard that Bayuha had broken through the limits of his predecessors. In particular, the skills that Bayuha displayed during the fight were enough to convince them that what he said was true. However, what was going on with these people who jumped onto the stage one after another? Regardless of their moves or experience, the strength and speed that they displayed surpassed them and reached the same level as Bayuha. One had to know that they were famous experts in the martial arts world. This time, Bayuha invited all the heroes and naturally invited famous people. However, what was going on with those people just now? All of them were experts who surpassed them, and all of them were unknown. Where did they pop out from? Could it be that Bayuha was just a paper tiger? Some people threw away the thought as soon as it popped into their heads. After all, both sides were fighting on the stage and the people below weren't blind. Not to mention anything else, everyone could see the power and speed of both sides when they fought. The 8 fights on the stage made the people below start to doubt their lives. Could it be that the world was filled with such experts and they were the only weaklings? Rinpoche looked at Bayuha, who exuded a bleak aura as he walked down the stage and entered the villa without looking back. Rinpoche felt a little sympathy for him. Actually, this person was quite powerful. He was able to advance his cultivation technique by a huge step. This was not something that just anyone could do. What a pity. How's it? Are you interested in giving me some pointers? Yang Sen smiled at Rinpoche. On the surface, it seemed that Rinpoche's skills were similar to those people from before. They were all at the man-wheel level, and this was easily discovered by the nation. However, Yang Sen had confidence in Rinpoche. After all, Rinpoche had traveled between Earth and the Blessed Enclave. His experience in martial arts were definitely not something these people could compare to. Forget it. Rinpoche shook his head. Even though he had practiced the fist of death, other than being ravaged by little Lolita, he didn't have much experience in fighting. It would be fine if they could use their guns, but it was obvious that they couldn't shoot in the arena. It mattered if TTT Havel TB. It was fine if he couldn't beat someone in that world, but if he was beaten up on Earth, it would be too shameful to expose himself in front of the country. Rinpoche didn't have much confidence in close combat. It was better for him to go back and train hard for 30 to 50 years. By then these people would have died of old age. Although he was a little cowardly, martial arts had never been his forte. In 2 years he would have reached the earth wheel level. At that time he would be able to hang them up with one hand. Only a fool would compete with them now. Coward. Someone beside Yang Sen sneered softly. In fact, when Yang Sen and Rinpoche were talking, they had been paying attention and guessing Rinpoche's identity. They were a little dissatisfied when Yang Sen asked him to give them pointers. However, Rinpoche's refusal made them look down on him. Rinpoche tilted his head to take a look. It was a young man in his late 20s who was looking at him provocatively. Rinpoche slowly took out his pistol and pointed it at him. You might die if I punch you. Yang Sen, the rest, that was a gun in his hand. Even an immortal wouldn't be able to escape from a gun fired at such a close range. What did he mean by, I might die if I punch you? How could it be like this? Mr. Rin? Yang Sen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm just joking. Rinpoche laughed. What era are we living in? What's the point of practicing martial arts? It's to strengthen the body, not to be brave and ruthless. We are the successors of socialism. What we have to do is to work hard for the 4 modernizations. Fighting and killing is too outrageous. Yang Sen, it seems like you are the only one who kills people's families. How dare you say this? In fact, I have been waiting since I was a child for my motherland to call me as its successor. However, it hasn't happened yet. Rinpoche recalled his many years of waiting and felt somewhat regretful. You will be the Prince Consort of Dayo in the future. What successor are you talking about? The Empress was originally in a daze. When she suddenly heard Rinpoche talk about successor, she immediately became dissatisfied. I'm just joking. Rinpoche grabbed her hand and squeezed it. The Empress squeezed it back. Rinpoche's hand swelled visibly. Yang Sen was slightly taken aback. The Empress's words revealed a lot of things. Previously, when Rinpoche wanted weapons for war, he already knew that there were countries and wars in the Grotto Heaven world. Furthermore, this Madame Qi should be someone from that country. Ren Baqin would be a prince consort in the future, which meant that his status in the grotto heaven world wouldn't be low. Yang Sen thought about it and felt that this was important news. The higher Ren Baqin's status in that world, the more valuable he was. Ren Baqin turned his head and said, "Let's go. I still want to hear about the progress that you told me previously." Seeing that he said this, Yang Sen didn't force him. He informed the people beside him, got up and left with Ren Baqin. "Mr. Ren, is your hand all right?" Yang Sen asked when he saw that Ren Baqin's hand was swollen like a pig's trotter. "It's fine. I'm used to it." Ren Baqin looked calm. "Wasn't it just a little swollen? It was painful and it wouldn't hurt anymore." When Ren Baqin followed Yang Sen back, the sky was already dark. He rejected Yang Sen's invitation to have a meal and first went to understand the recent progress in the laboratory. There was a lot of progress. After all, with the help of supercomputers and various modern instruments, the progress of various research projects couldn't be compared to the past. In the past, it would take half a lifetime to calculate, verify, or discover things. Now, it would only take a few days or even a few hours. What caught Ren Baqin's attention the most were the martial arts manuals and the tests for man-wheel experts. With these man-wheel experts, the progress in the deduction of the martial arts manuals was very fast. The 4 sets of martial arts manuals that Ren Baqin brought had basically been optimized by the laboratory. The cultivation methods were more reasonable and simple. Of course, this was also related to the fact that the martial arts manuals that Ren Baqin brought were very simple. These simple martial arts manuals didn't involve many aspects, didn't have great potential, and were easier to modify. After the optimization of the laboratory, these simple martial arts manuals were much stronger than before. If the full score was 5 points, these martial arts manuals were originally 2 points for power, 2 points for cultivation speed, and 2 points for potential. After the optimization they actually reached 5 points in all aspects, which was a forceful upgrade. Ren Baqin couldn't help but admire this kind of progress. He even wanted to hand over his Rui visualization. Another thing that Ren Baqin was concerned about was the discovery of a few new substances in the blood of the man-wheel experts cultivated in the country. One of them was an amine molecule. The laboratory named it polypropylamine, which was distributed in the blood of man-wheel experts. Its biggest function was to transform a portion of the nutrient-carrying molecules in the blood into another substance. Chapter 429. The progress made by the Messier 87 department over the past few months made Ren Baqin very happy. Although the martial arts in that world were of a high level and had their own cultivation system, they lacked the scientific research on Earth that fundamentally solved all aspects of cultivation. Given more time, when martial arts entered the army, schools, and society, Earth would enter the era of cultivation. That kind of future could be anticipated. Since martial arts already existed, it couldn't be hidden from people. There would be people practicing cultivation techniques everywhere, and the shape of the entire society would definitely change. Everyone would be impacted by this wave of change. There were some good aspects, such as the national football team finally being saved. More likely, it would cause various social problems after people gained power. However, the nation would definitely formulate a comprehensive plan to adapt to the new social form. Ren Baqin didn't need to consider these things as it was something that the nation needed to consider. He was happy to see such a situation. This world had been peaceful for too long, and such changes would bring about an interesting future. As for whether such a future would have an impact on his and the Empress's current status, he wasn't worried. He was the one who stood at the peak of this era, the one who stood at the tip of the wave. Everything started with him. As for the nation, as long as the Empress advanced to longevity heaven, even if Earth was full of Earth-wheel experts, she would still be a deterrent to everyone. However, there was still a long way to go before Earth-wheel experts could be found everywhere. Currently, the biggest restriction on Earth wasn't only martial arts, but also food and the environment. Unless Earth also had food that was full of vitality like the other world, it would take a long time to reach the Earth-wheel level even if one was talented. After walking around the Messier 87 department, Ren Baqin took all kinds of information and returned to the villa with the Empress. There was no need to care about Earth for the time being. It would be difficult to reach the level that he wanted to see in a short period of time. As for the information, he had to keep it. The research information on cultivation on Earth was also useful to that world. Perhaps he would talk about scientific cultivation in the future? That sounded good. For the next 2 days, the Empress played with her new phone in the villa. She liked this kind of phone that could be wrapped around her wrist like a watch and could also be used as an electronic watch. Zhixiao, what are you playing? Ren Baqin came over to look at the screen after cooking and found that it was a game. I think it's called Kings of Glory? Just now, when she was fiddling with her phone, she saw the advertisement for Honor of Kings and was suddenly attracted to the characters in the advertisement. It's time to eat. Ren Baqin smiled. He wasn't worried that the Empress would be tricked by others in the game and want to exterminate her entire clan. This was because the Empress was definitely the one who would set others up. Be prepared to fight 4 against 5 if you're in the same team as her. After dinner, the two of them sat on the sofa and played Honor of Kings. A few minutes later, 3 people thousands of miles away almost smashed their phones. Encountering one bad teammate was bad enough, let alone 2. Under the night sky, the two of them hid in the brightly lit villa and played tricks on each other, which made them feel very happy. After staying on Earth for a few days, the two of them returned to Dayo. Ren Baqin divided the students into 5 groups, assigned them tasks and got them to enter Tianjin Basin separately. The so-called tasks were to let them use their own eyes to observe the living conditions and social patterns of the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation, understand their thoughts and think about how to deal with them. They had never learned these things. Ren Baqin wanted them to seriously understand the parts of this nation that most people didn't understand and think about it for themselves. Regardless of whether what they saw, thought, and got matched up with Ren Baqin's ideas, this was a very important part of their lives. Running an educational institute to educate people wasn't just about teaching, but also about educating people. Teacher, we are setting off. The next day, everyone bade farewell to Ren Baqin at the residence. The tasks that Ren Baqin arranged for them made them somewhat excited. This was the first time that they left their familiar environment to do something that seemed to have a profound meaning. According to what Ren Baqin said at that time, what they saw and got would affect the future of tens of millions of people. Be careful, Ren Baqin couldn't help but say as he looked at the familiar young faces in the courtyard. Although these students were at least at the man-will level, there was at least one student in each team who was at the earth-will level. With this kind of strength, they should be able to protect themselves. However, Ren Baqin was still somewhat worried. After all, these were only half-grown children. The oldest was only 18 years old, and the youngest was only 11 years old. Don't worry. If anyone dares to cause trouble, I will twist his head off and kick it like a ball, Du Laolu said as he patted his chest. Don't let anyone twist your head off, someone immediately said with a laugh. Who dares? Have you seen a big fist? Du Laolu raised his fist and threatened. Trash. Little Lolita looked at him sideways with a face full of contempt. It's better to be careful, Ren Baqin said faintly. Killing someone doesn't just require a knife. If someone has their eyes on you, they can knock all of you out with a bag of knockout drugs. When that happens, I won't send anyone to save you. I can't afford to lose face. Moreover, even if I wanted to save you, your life and death might not be in your control and I might not be able to save you. Although Tianjin Basin is also in Dayo, it's different from what you know. The people there are more complicated. Yes, I understand. After hearing what Ren Baqin said, everyone became much more serious. Let's set off, Ren Baqin said with his hands behind his back as he watched the students leave the courtyard with smiles on their faces. I hope they are safe, Ren Baqin said softly as he watched them leave. After all, he had taught these students for a few months and had some feelings for them. Ren Baqin didn't want them to return with fewer people. Although he arranged for 2 guards to follow behind each team, it might not be foolproof. After another day, Ren Baqin bade farewell to the Empress and left the city. This time, Ren Baqin didn't bring too many things. He only brought a pistol, a rifle, a few grenades and Lin Xiaola, who was sleeping soundly in the carriage. She should be able to guarantee his safety. After all, the people in Tianjin Basin were all remnant citizens of the Hao Nation. Bringing along aboriginal guards would more or less attract attention and could easily expose his identity. Ren Baqin and Lin Xiaola weren't aboriginals, so it might be less dangerous for the two of them to be in Tianjin Basin. However, the biggest problem facing Ren Baqin now was how to make the 2 fork-horned cows that were pulling the carriage walk in a straight line. Not long after he left the city, he saw these 2 fellows running into the forest at the side. Stop, stop. Ren Baqin whipped the fork-horned cows and they ran even faster. Chapter 430. The ancients had a good saying, the chariot overturned before the victory was achieved, causing the hero to shed tears. Ren Baqin felt that this saying was very true. The ancients were very powerful and always made sense. This was the situation he was in now. Before he could even travel 500 meters out of the city, the chariot overturned and Rinpoche was covered in grass juice. The two stupid oxen were still eating grass indifferently. If he didn't have to rely on them as a means of transportation, he would have eaten beef tonight. Lin Xiaola climbed out of the chariot with sleepy eyes. She turned her head and looked around before asking in confusion, "How did the chariot overturn?" "Don't talk. Lift the chariot back to the road first," Rinpoche said helplessly. Lin Xiaola lifted the chariot with one hand, and Rinpoche dragged the two forkhorn cows back to the road before continuing. "When are we having dinner? You eat when you wake up and sleep when you are full. Why don't you take a look at how fat you are?" Rinpoche said disdainfully. That being said, Lin Xiaola wasn't fat at all. Not only was she not fat, but she was also very thin and weak. She didn't look like other experts who were full of vigor and heroic. No one could tell that she was actually an expert. "It doesn't matter if you're fat," Lin Xiaola said indifferently as she rubbed her chest. "What are you doing?" Rinpoche was amused by her actions. That flat chest of hers was the same regardless of whether she rubbed it or not. Lin Xiaola looked down and said confidently, "This is called stepping on breasts. I have it in my memory and it seems to work." "You need talent to step on breasts. Without you, what else can you step on?" Rinpoche stabbed her in the heart. "If I step on it for another 50 years, I will definitely be able to step on it." Lin Xiaola wasn't discouraged at all. Rinpoche was speechless. "Your way of calculating time might be different from the average person. When are you going to be an adult?" Rinpoche felt a headache when he thought about how she was still underage at the age of 40 or 50. This kind of inhuman lifespan was really enviable. It should be about 50 years, a lifespan that made people envious and jealous. If he sent her to the laboratory, he didn't know if she could be developed to extend her lifespan. He would try to get a bottle of blood next time. Not long after the two of them walked forward, the road began to descend. After making a turn, they arrived at a winding mountain road. From their current position to the flat ground at the bottom, there was a distance of 700 to 800 meters. In the distance, there was an endless wilderness, a dense forest, and a city within their field of vision. That was today's destination, the first city after entering Tianjin Basin, Longzhou City. Behind Longzhou City was a winding mountain range. It was said that there was an earth dragon in Tianjin Basin that was coiled up. The dragon's head was facing the outside of Tianjin Basin as if it was going to soar into the sky and pounce toward the north. The saying that obtaining Tianjin Basin was equivalent to obtaining the world wasn't unrelated to this earth dragon. Longzhou City was located at the head of this earth dragon. Of course, this was what the Hao Nation said. The Aboriginals did not pay attention to this. There was a checkpoint at both ends of the winding mountain road. Once these two checkpoints were blocked, more than 10 million remnant citizens of the Hao Nation would be locked in Tianjin Basin. Rinpoche took out his clearance token, and the checkpoint was naturally opened. After exiting the checkpoint, there was an endless plain in front of them. A dirt road extended from the checkpoint all the way to the city in the distance, which was almost invisible at this time. At this time, there were many ox carts coming and going on this road. They were caravans going to and fro Gu City, and Rinpoche and Lin Xiaola weren't conspicuous among them. If there was anything worth noticing, it would be that the other carts going from Gu City to Longzhou City were filled with all kinds of goods, while their cart was empty. From the marks left by the wheels and the sound of the ox cart driving on the road, it could be seen that it was empty. Therefore, Rinpoche didn't try to chat with the merchants next to him as it would be too easy for them to detect something suspicious. Therefore, his attention was focused on the large tracts of farmland on both sides of the road, as well as the farmers who were working in the farmland. Rinpoche noticed that the farming tools used by the farmers were almost all made of stone with wooden handles attached to the ends. Just like outside, a kitchen knife could be regarded as a family heirloom. Iron farming tools were too extravagant for the Aboriginals and the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation. The remnant citizens of the Hao Nation that Rinpoche met previously were mostly merchants. Even though their statuses weren't high, they weren't considered poor either. However, Rinpoche could see a lot of things from these farmers. At the very least, the living conditions of these remnant citizens of the Hao Nation probably weren't very good. Even though these farmers weren't sallow and emaciated, their clothes could be said to be ragged, and their clothes were full of puddings of various sizes. The most important thing was the vitality of these farmers, which gave people the feeling that they were walking corpses and had no vitality at all. "Sure enough, you have to see it with your own eyes to know," Rinpoche said softly. "There's a red lollipop in your bag. Give me one. I haven't eaten that before and I have to eat it with my own mouth to know." Lin Xiaola immediately followed up with his words. Be careful of tooth decay. Ren Baqin took out a handful of lollipops from his pocket. Lin Xiaola's eyes widened. Here's a red one. Ren Baqin took one out and threw it to Lin Xiaola. Stingy. Lin Xiaola watched as Ren Baqin put away that handful of lollipops and almost stretched out her claws to scratch him. Lin Xiaola carefully tore off the wrapper of the lollipop and neatly folded it before putting it in her pocket. She had been collecting these things recently. By the way, what are you doing here? She finally remembered to ask about the purpose of her visit. I'm here to check on their situation and see how to make them behave, Ren Baqin said as he pointed to the farmers in the farmland. Did they provoke you? I will help you beat them up. Just give me a piece of lollipop for each person I beat up, Lin Xiaola said in astonishment. The next time we start a war with Great Xia, can I just let you out? Ren Baqin turned his head to look at this cheap expert and felt like he was closing the door and releasing a dog. I can't beat an army, Lin Xiaola immediately replied. If she were to barge into an army, she might not be able to escape. Even though Great Xia couldn't withstand a single blow from the aboriginals, it was because they had the winged cavalry, which had thousands of earthwheel experts. If it was just her, she would probably be torn apart by others. We can only bully the farmers. Is there a need for you? Ren Baqin squinted his eyes and said with disdain. That's true. Lin Xiaola was still thin-skinned. After thinking about it, she felt that what Ren Baqin said made sense and didn't mention it again. When it was close to evening, the two of them finally arrived at Longzhou City along the dirt road. While Ren Baqin was waiting for the inspection, he carefully sized up the guards at the lower city gate. They were dressed in leather armor, were generally thin, and had long swords hanging from their waists. Before coming here, he already knew that these swords were all bone swords. Let's see what's in the carriage. When it was their turn, one of the guards came to open the curtain. When he saw that there was only one box inside, his eyes lit up. Normally, when one returned from Gu City, it would be filled with all kinds of items. Since there was only one box, it meant that the items inside were valuable. His heart immediately lit up. Open the box. Ren Baqin stuffed a handful of silver fragments into his hand. If it's really opened, you won't be able to get these. The guards of Longzhou City were very greedy. After all, there were only trade caravans coming and going, and there was only one route. Even if those merchants had complaints, they had no choice but to pass through here. Naturally, the guards would unscrupulously plunder the riches. Ren Baqin already knew about this before coming here, so he wasn't surprised. Ren Baqin's words made the expression on the guard's face freeze. Just like what Ren Baqin said, if there were valuable items in the carriage, even if he asked for more money, they wouldn't belong to him. It was better to accept while he was ahead. This handful of silver fragments was equivalent to a month's worth of riches. Chapter 431. Ren Baqin sat on the ox cart and looked at the buildings and pedestrians on both sides of the road. It was a completely unfamiliar environment and he felt like he was on a tour. Most of the buildings in Longzhou City were made of wood or pillars. The buildings were dilapidated, and the closer they were to the city gate, the more so. Many children in old clothes or with bare buttocks were running around or biting their dirty fingers while looking at him. Regardless of where one was, rich or poor, children were always full of energy. One could see many more things from the faces of adults. After looking around, Ren Baqin felt that the ordinary residents weren't doing too well. Whether it was in terms of clothes, complexion, or mental outlook. Their clothes were shabby and they gave off a numb feeling. They didn't smile much. As he walked deeper into the city, the buildings on both sides of the road were in better condition. There were also some flowers and plants outside the houses on both sides of the road as decorations. Yueli Inn. Ren Baqin first saw the word guest, and only saw the name of the inn when he got closer. It was indeed worthy of being the largest in chain in the martial arts world. It had even opened in Dayo, another world. Boss, 2 top-class rooms, Ren Baqin shouted as he walked into the courtyard. This was how it was played on television. What's a good room? The lady boss in front of the counter raised her head, and the moment she opened her mouth, a strong smell came out of her mouth. She was quite pretty. Although her forehead was a little big, she had curved eyebrows and almond-shaped eyes. She looked like she was in her 30s and looked charming. Top-class room, the best room. Ren Baqin's face fell as he got off to a bad start. Neo Air 2A class rooms. The lady boss shouted first before smiling at Ren Baqin and saying, "Customer, your words are quite interesting. Are you from afar?" "Yes, from the Yun Nation." Ren Baqin nodded. This was his identity this time. He and Lin Xiaola didn't look like the remnant citizens of the Hao nation, but more like the people of the Yin nation and Great Xia. Are you still at war? Was the journey easy? The lady boss asked. Yes. The road is not easy and it took a lot of effort. There's an ox cart outside and I'll rush into the courtyard first. Ren Baqin went out to bring the ox cart in. The lady boss leaned against the door and watched his movements. Her eyes flickered, and when she saw how he tied the cow to the stable, she was slightly puzzled. The way they tied the rope didn't seem to be done by the people of the Yun nation. Instead, it seemed to be done by the aboriginals. The people of the Yun nation liked to wear Qingyun buckles, while the aboriginals wore 3-ring buckles on their mounts. Ren Baqin watched how the guards tied their mounts to the tree every day. Naturally, he was used to their method and didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. When Ren Baqin looked up at her, she smiled again. Have we arrived? When he opened the curtain, she groaned and slowly crawled out as if she didn't have any bones. After she came out, she asked Ren Baqin to carry her suitcase. Then, the two of them were led by the waiter to their rooms. They were 2 adjacent rooms on the 2nd floor. On the way upstairs, the landlady asked lazily, "Is there nothing else in the car? If you lose it, I won't take responsibility." No more. You've brought very little with you. The room was clean. After all, this was Longzhou City, the first city after entering the basin. There were many merchants coming and going, and the inns were well maintained. Let's go out for a walk. Ren Baqin kicked Lin Xiaola, who was paralyzed on the bed the moment she entered the room. Oh! Ren Baqin expressionlessly took out a lollipop, waved it in front of her, and then threw it at the door. A gust of wind blew past and she appeared at the door. Sure enough, lollipops weren't omnipotent, but it was impossible not to have lollipops. Ren Baqin then opened the suitcase, took out a grenade, put it in his money bag and hung it on his waist. He heard that there were many pickpockets here? Then he locked the suitcase and left the room. Landlady, don't let anyone enter our room, Ren Baqin said. Don't worry. If anyone enters, I'll break his claws. Not long after Ren Baqin left, the landlady went upstairs, opened the door and entered. She took out a wire and poked it twice in the lock. After opening the suitcase, she saw a pile of bullets, a dozen grenades, a rifle and a few books. She first picked up the books and flipped through them. She realized that the handwriting on them was unrecognizable. She then carefully looked at the grenades and bullets, and finally put them back into the suitcase before locking it. Ren Baqin brought Lin Xiaola out of the room. With his hands behind his back, he walked toward the center of the city while sizing up the shops on both sides. There were all kinds of cloth shops, salt shops, medicine shops, rice shops and clothing shops. There were all kinds of things that should be there. People were going in and out of the shops and it looked very lively. After standing at the side and watching for a while, Ren Baqin knew what kind of people were going in and out of these shops. Many of them carried a bag or a few bags of things when they came out and placed them on a cart or carried them on a bamboo stick. They didn't look like ordinary people but more like small vendors in other cities. They bought the things they needed at a low price here and then went to the countryside or small towns to sell them. After walking for a short distance, he smelled a fragrance that filled his nose. He followed the smell and found someone using a stove to roast a fruit that was much bigger than lychees. After roasting for a while, the shell would crack and emit a fragrant smell. How much is it? Ren Baqin asked. 3 for 1 copper coin. Ren Baqin turned his head to look at Lin Xiaola, who was beside him. Her saliva was dripping down her neck and into her clothes. Give me 30. Ren Baqin threw over a tael of silver. The shell was very hot. When the shell was peeled off, the golden flesh was revealed. It tasted a little like a coconut. It was a little chewy but it tasted pretty good. For the rest of the journey, Lin Xiaola held bag after bag of snacks and couldn't stop eating. Get out of the way, get out of the way. The sound of hooves could be heard. A few people in long robes rode on short horses and galloped across the street, causing a little commotion. Who are they? Ren Baqin stood by the side of the road and asked a vendor. Customer, are you from afar? They are from the 9-Blade sect. Don't provoke them and it will be fine. The vendor laughed. Galloping on a horse in the city and no one cares? Ren Baqin asked. Don't talk nonsense. The 9-Blade sect is quite powerful in this area. If someone hears you, be careful not to cause trouble for you, the vendor hurriedly said. So overbearing? I didn't say anything. I just wanted to ask if anyone cares about such a situation. Ren Baqin raised his eyebrows and threw a tael of silver to the vendor. Please clear up my doubts. We are from another place and we need to get a feel of the place first so that we don't provoke people we shouldn't provoke. Customer, you will understand after staying for a while. Many of the city guards are disciples of the Nine-Blade sect, and there are also many people from the Public Order Bureau. As long as there is nothing wrong, naturally no one cares about them, the vendor said softly as he looked around. Rinpoche threw another tale of silver over and heard a lot of information from the vendor. Within the boundaries of Longzhou City, the most powerful force wasn't the prefecture chief who controlled the 5,000 guards, but a sect called the Golden Ring Residents. It was the biggest sect in the area of Longzhou City, Jisai City, and Senyuanli City. Of course, this Golden Ring Residence was only the biggest force in this area. In fact, Longzhou City belonged to one of the three biggest forces in this basin. As a result, even though the Golden Ring Residence was stronger than the prefecture chief in this area, they didn't dare to provoke the city chief. Of course, the city chief wouldn't provoke them either because the Golden Ring Residence wasn't just one sect. Other than these two forces, there were also two smaller sections. One was the Nine-Blade sect, and the other was the Jiangshi sect. In addition, there was a local gang called the Death Toad that controlled a group of local ruffians and thieves. They weren't very powerful, and if they were powerful, the prefecture chief of Longzhou City wouldn't tolerate them. According to the vendor, even this Death Toad wasn't someone outsiders could provoke. When outside, safety came first and harmony was the most important. No matter who you met, you just had to lower your head and there was no need to cause trouble. Rinpoche thanked the vendor for his kindness and continued to walk forward with Lin Xiaola. He had a rough idea of the sphere of influence in Longzhou City, but he didn't expect such a small city to have so many different forces. Compared to the area where the aboriginals were, it was really much more chaotic. "Hey, your money bag has been stolen," Lin Xiaola said vaguely as she ate the fruit in her hand. Rinpoche touched the money bag at his waist and found that it was indeed gone. "Do you want me to help you snatch it back?" 5 lollipops. Lin Xiaola's eyes lit up. "There's no need." Rinpoche smiled. They would probably be able to hear the sound of firecrackers in a while. Other people didn't know what the function of a grenade was, but they would definitely pull it when they saw the ring on it. The two of them walked forward for the time it took to drink 2 cups of tea before they heard a loud boom coming from another direction. Chapter 432. In a small alley, more than 10 people were gathered there. The surrounding pedestrians stuck their heads out to take a look, but when they saw the ferocious man glaring at them, they hurriedly lowered their heads and left. "What happened?" A burly man with a full beard and floral embroidery on his body asked in a deep voice. He was wearing a sleeveless jacket and a pleated skirt. Pleated skirts were the traditional clothing of the remnant citizens of the Han Nation, regardless of gender. "I don't know, we just arrived too." The others shook their heads. "They only rushed here after hearing the noise." "Who's dead?" The corpses scattered in the alley were no longer recognizable. They were like rags and some of their limbs were nowhere to be found. "It's Two-Headed Snake. I saw him come in just now," a 15 or 16-year-old youth said from not far away. "He went to the streets to work just now. He should have succeeded, but I don't know how he became like this." The youth looked a little fearful. Although he was young, he had seen many life and death situations. Last month, there was a man about his age who stole from the father of a Nine-Blade sect disciple. In the end, he was tied to a horse and dragged to death outside the city. He saw it with his own eyes. Logically speaking, he should be used to seeing dead people and shouldn't show such an expression. The reason why he showed such an expression was because he could see clearly that no one had entered the alley. Just now, he secretly followed behind the Two-Headed Snake to see if he had obtained anything good. He didn't expect to hear a thunderous sound coming from inside the alley as soon as he reached the mouth of the alley. Then he saw the corpse. There was a strange smell in the air. From the beginning to the end, he didn't see anyone else. Subsequently, he told everyone about what he saw. Everyone was puzzled. Since no one else appeared, how did Two-Headed Snake die? "Look at the wall." Someone suddenly pointed at the wall and shouted. There were many small holes in the surrounding wall. Because of the explosion of the grenade, the wall was slightly damaged. The traces of these fragments entering the wall were not easy to be discovered. Very quickly, everyone dug out some fragments from the wall. However, everyone still couldn't figure out what exactly happened. This was because grenades were beyond their knowledge. "Check if there are any suspicious people in the city," the burly man said. They had to figure out what exactly happened first. At this moment, Rinpoche was eating noodles. After staying in Dayo for so long, he could finally eat noodles. There was a small restaurant by the street. When he entered, he saw 2 people eating noodles there. Rinpoche pointed in their direction and said, "Give me a portion as well." The noodles were not very delicious. They were sour and spicy and the taste was a little strange. However, he was satisfied to be able to eat noodles in this place. On the way back, Lin Xiaola suddenly stretched out her hand at lightning speed and grabbed the hand of a young man in his 20s. Her eyes were blazing. She could tolerate stealing Rinpoche's wallet, but she absolutely couldn't tolerate stealing his bag of sweets. She had been eyeing it for a long time, but he actually dared to stretch his claws out? Ouch, ouch, it's broken. The young man behind Rinpoche had a pained look on his face as Lin Xiaola grabbed his wrist. His eyes darted left and right as he tried to find a way to escape. He stole from you. Lin Xiaola frowned. Although she had caught him, she didn't know how to deal with him. She spent most of her time in Qingxin Palace Hall. The 2 times she came out, she followed Rinpoche. Now that she encountered such a situation, she didn't know what to do. Rinpoche grabbed the young man's clothes and dragged him into a nearby alley. How do you think I should deal with you? Should I break your hand or your leg? Rinpoche asked calmly as he pressed the young man against the wall. He wasn't going to cause trouble this time around. He was only going to investigate, but that didn't mean that he could tolerate anything. After stealing a money bag, he still wanted to steal a bag of sweets? Moreover, he even wanted to fleece a sheep? Do you think I'm easy to bully? In any case, I'm a man-wheel expert. Are you from another place? Let me tell you, I'm from the Death Toad. You'd better let me go, and I definitely won't find trouble with you. Otherwise, we have 800 brothers. No matter how good the 2 of you are, you won't be able to walk out of Longzhou City. The young man rolled his eyes and revealed a ferocious expression. In his line of work, one had to have good eyesight. Otherwise, if he provoked someone he shouldn't provoke, he wouldn't even be able to keep his life. From the moment the 2 of them left the restaurant, he had been watching them. With one look, he could tell that they weren't locals. Outsiders were unfamiliar with this place. Generally, it was better to have one less thing to do. Therefore, the moment he opened his mouth, he scared the 2 of them. 800 brothers? So scary. Rinpoche smiled faintly as he held the other party's hand. This hand is quite beautiful. One look and I can tell that you didn't do much work. There aren't even any calluses. It's rare for a man to have such a hand. Looking at Rinpoche's expression, the young man immediately felt that he was in trouble. Snap. The young man's index finger was pressed against the back of his hand. The young man let out a miserable howl. This looks much more pleasing to the eye. Rinpoche lowered his head and looked at the young man who was bending over and holding his finger as he howled miserably. Next time, watch your eyes more carefully, Rinpoche said and walked out of the alley unhurriedly. That's it. Lin Xiaola followed beside Rinpoche and asked softly, What else can I do? Rinpoche asked. After all, he wasn't here to stir up trouble. Punishing without teaching is called torture. I saw this in the ancient books. Lin Xiaola was puzzled. Rinpoche turned his head and looked at her as if she was an alien. What? Is there something wrong with the ancient books? Lin Xiaola asked doubtfully. You are right. Rinpoche agreed. Let's go back. He brought Lin Xiaola back to the vicinity of the alley and happened to see that person walking out. When he saw the 2 of them, he immediately shuddered. Rinpoche grabbed his chest and pulled him back into the alley. Sir, you're a magnanimous person. Don't lower yourself to my level. The young man was scared out of his wits when he saw the 2 of them. He quickly begged for mercy and didn't forget to wave his fingers in front of Rinpoche. Do you know what you did wrong? Rinpoche asked. I know I was blind and offended the 2 of you. I won't dare to do it again. The young man quickly begged for mercy. If you make a mistake, you'll be punished. If you get beaten, you'll have to stand up straight. It's hard to break an earthen jar without leaving the well. You'll have to pay for what you've done sooner or later. Tell me, of all the things you could have done at your age, why did you come out to steal? If he was caught, wouldn't he be beaten to death if he met a ruthless person? Not everyone is as easy to talk to as me. The young man scowled. Was the person in front of him crazy? He had already left, yet he still came back to teach him a lesson? Moreover, this was breaking one of his fingers. Do you have some misunderstanding about the word, easy to talk to? He was either talkative or easy to talk to. Can you let me go and let me go to the medicine shop to take a look at my finger? I still have to rely on this finger to eat? Are you convinced by what I said? Rinpoche's saliva flew all over the place before he finally asked this question. I accept. I will turn over a new leaf when I go back, the young man scowled. Come, let me take a look at your finger. This one is broken. How did it become like this? It's not symmetrical. Rinpoche grabbed the young man's hand, and the young man suddenly trembled in fear. Crack. Along with the crisp sound of bones breaking, the middle finger was also attached to the back of his hand. Punishing without teaching is called abuse. I taught without punishing and spared your life. Rinpoche let go of the young man, feeling very satisfied. Teaching without punishing means that evil people won't be punished. Lin Xiaola added. The young man's face turned green when he heard this. Must the two of you kill me? How could this little girl be so ruthless? Forget it. It's fine as long as you taught him. Let's not kill him. He's just trying to make a living. Who would do this if they could do something else? It's not easy for him. Rinpoche looked kind. Oh. Lin Xiaola nodded. After the two of them left, the young man looked at his two fingers that were attached to the back of his hand with a pale face. Mother ***, I met a lunatic. I wonder if these two fingers can be reattached. The young man's hands were wrapped in cloth as he dragged his legs home. He was really unlucky today and didn't know if he could take revenge. Street crossing rat, how did you end up like this? Not long after he returned to his shabby house, a young man came looking for him. Don't mention it. When this matter was brought up, he was covered in snot and tears. Although it was common for him to be beaten up when he was caught as a thief, today's incident made him feel aggrieved. Were these two crazy people? Did you see any strange people in the city? That person asked when he saw that the young man didn't want to talk about it. Half Mountain Flower instructed us to report any suspicious or strange strangers. Half Mountain Flower was the boss of this area and was in charge of more than 20 pickpockets. Street crossing rat's eyes lit up when he heard this. Weren't these two strangers today? Furthermore, they were two crazy people. He could finally take revenge. One had to know that Half Mountain Flower was a man-wheel expert, and his leader was even an earth-wheel expert. Although these two people had some martial arts at their age, how good could their martial arts be? He didn't believe that they would be able to get away with their leader. In his heart, an earth-wheel expert was already the most powerful person. He could even go to a brothel with two little girls, one in front and the other pushing him from the back. Also, that little girl was so beautiful, but her heart was actually so ruthless. He didn't know how the leader would deal with her. Chapter 433. At night at the Yueli Inn. His son was preparing to close for the day. Although the city gates were open all night, there was basically no one around at this time. When he closed the door and turned around, he felt that his eyes were blurry and quickly rubbed them. There was clearly no one in the lobby just now, but now there was a burly man standing in front of the counter. Sting, are there any suspicious strangers? The burly man had a square face, thick eyebrows and big eyes. He was considered dignified and tall. Although he was not as tall as the Aboriginals, he was slightly taller than the ordinary remnant citizens of the Hao Nation. Hey, if it isn't Owner Lin. Why are you here today? The lady boss saw the man in front of her and immediately put on a smile. At the same time she was thinking, is this fellow looking for strangers? Who is he looking for? The two people upstairs? No matter where there was light, there would be darkness. There would always be places where light couldn't reach. There was only one underground force in Longzhou City, the Death Toad. The man in front of her was called Lin Yuan, the deputy chief of the Death Toad. It was said that he was much more powerful than the chief. However, his life had been saved by the chief, and he had always been the deputy. Even though he was more powerful than the Death Toad, he had not been disloyal and was considered a trustworthy person. In Longzhou City he could be considered a well-known figure. Although the Death Toad gang had gathered a group of ruffians, which made people look down on them, the Death Toad and Lin Yuan's martial arts were solid. Even the Nine-Blade sect would not provoke them. I'll leave after asking a few questions. You, Sting, are really free and unfettered in such a place. I'm afraid that the people below don't understand etiquette, so I came to ask them personally, Lin Yuan said in a deep voice. Oh? It can't be a small matter to trouble Owner Lin, right? I don't know why you're making such a fuss, the lady boss said softly as she leaned against the counter. Just tell me if there are any. A man and a woman, and they are both young, Lin Yuan said in a deep voice. You know my rules. The lady boss glanced at the second floor and rolled her eyes. I understand. Thank you. Lin Yuan cupped his fists. He understood what Sting meant. Her rules were that no one could cause trouble in the store. No one could touch her customers in the store. What's his background? Lin Yuan lowered his voice. If you can make me feel that you're stronger than that dead man of mine, I'll tell you everything. The lady boss moved her body and sat on the bar counter. She placed a hand on Lin Yuan's shoulder and said softly. Lin Yuan took a step back and said, You must be joking. Be needle, jade knife, I can't afford to provoke the two of you. Are you looking down on me because I'm getting old? The lady boss said faintly, her eyes moving about, seducing one's soul. Lin Yuan's heart skipped a beat, but he quickly suppressed it. The green snake's mouth, the wasp's stinger. From the name of the flower one could tell who she was. Those who wanted to get intimate with her but ended up losing their lives were like carps crossing the river. It was said that a young master from a city lord's family in the north had died. He had been skinned alive. His skin had been peeled off, stuffed with straw, and the meat had been made into buns. After that, she was exposed, so she had no choice but to escape here. After she escaped, it was said that dozens of puppets made of human skin stuffed with straw were found. Therefore she also had a flower named Pai Weng. Look at your guts. The lady boss stretched out her finger and drew a circle in front of him. Although I'm gutsy, I know what I can touch and what I can't. Lin Yuan squeezed out a smile. The lady boss grabbed his clothes and pulled him in front of her. She blew into his ear and whispered, "They said they are merchants from the Yun nation. However, I didn't see any goods. Thank you." Lin Yuan quickly took a few steps back, cupped his hands at her, and disappeared into the night. The lady boss looked at his disappearing figure and sneered. It would be a good thing if someone could help her find out what was going on. Ren Baqin naturally didn't know that he had been targeted as soon as he arrived in Longzhou City. Furthermore, it wasn't just one group of people. Previously, he had repeatedly exhorted the students not to get into trouble. He didn't expect that nothing would happen to the students, but he himself would be targeted. The night passed. The next morning when he opened the door, a fragrant body threw itself into his arms. Ah! A soft and seductive cry of surprise sounded. Ren Baqin quickly raised his hands to block the other party and grabbed a couple of handfuls. Felt pretty good. Are you alright? Ren Baqin pretended that he didn't notice anything as he helped the lady who threw herself into his arms. I wanted to ask if you wanted breakfast. I didn't expect to slip and bump into you. The lady boss's face was flushed and she pushed her chest forward. When she stood up, she gently brushed her hands over Ren Baqin's body. Ren Baqin savored the feeling and his expression didn't change at all. It's good that you're alright. Prepare breakfast for two more. After sending the lady boss off, Ren Baqin squinted his eyes. It was such a coincidence that she bumped into him as soon as he opened the door. Longzhou City wasn't big, but there were many demons and monsters. It was much more interesting to come out than to stay in the palace. There was more of a Jianghu flavor. Staying in the palace or beside the empress wasn't as exciting. The Jianghu was a place that all men yearned for. It was full of coquettish young married women, unmarried heroines and cross-dressing beggars. As his mind wandered, he walked to the room next door and pushed the door open. Lin Xiaola was sprawled out on the bed, drooling. She was wearing a thin white tube top and shorts that were almost sticking to her body. Ren Baqin confirmed that her flat figure wasn't as developed as his chest muscles. This was such a sad story. Wake up, the sun is shining on your butt. Ren Baqin stood by the bed and shouted. There was no response. It's time to eat. Oh, where? Lin Xiaola immediately sat up with hazy eyes. Put on your clothes, let's go downstairs to eat. After eating, Ren Baqin put 2 grenades in his pocket and continued to walk around with Lin Xiaola. Along the way he bought a money bag, stuffed a grenade into it and hung the money bag on his waist. The two of them walked around for the whole morning from the north to the south of the city. Along the way they inquired about their group of students. After all, with so many aboriginal youths, it was quite conspicuous and easy to find out about them. When he entered the city yesterday, they were still in the city and had only left the city this morning. At the same time, 5 disciples of the Nine Blades sect rode into the city ostentatiously on short horses. Let's drink and rest first. We will go to work in the afternoon, one of the youths said to everyone. One of the young men said to the crowd. Everyone immediately responded and shouted, Xiaoyuan, you should be the one paying for this drink. No problem. That youth smiled and led everyone into a restaurant by the roadside. After everyone had eaten and drunk their fill, the youth brushed past someone as he walked down the stairs. There was a slip of paper in his hand. He took a glance at the note when no one was paying attention and immediately understood. Not long after Ren Baqin and Lin Xiaola left the restaurant, they saw the crowd in front of them becoming a little chaotic as they moved to both sides. There was the sound of hurried hooves as 5 disciples of the Nine Blades sect galloped along the road while shouting, Make way, make way. Ren Baqin and Lin Xiaola stood by the roadside indifferently and waited for the horses to pass. He didn't expect one of the horses to charge toward them. The youth on the horse shouted, "The horse is out of control. Make way, make way." Chapter 434. He did it on purpose, Lin Xiaola replied quickly. Ren Baqin felt that something was amiss even without Lin Xiaola's reminder. It was too much of a coincidence that so many people were charging at them just like in the morning. Kill the horse and leave the person behind. While they were talking, the horse was only 3 meters away from Ren Baqin. Ren Baqin could feel the wind from the galloping horse on his face. A small figure appeared in front of Ren Baqin, raised its paw and slapped at the horse. The surrounding people immediately exclaimed. Although the dwarf horse wasn't tall, it was strong and could kill a person. Lin Xiaola, who was in front of Ren Baqin, looked thin and weak. It was as if a gust of wind could blow her away, let alone being hit by a horse. Everyone could almost see the scene of her being hit by the horse. Thump. As Lin Xiaola slapped the horse's head with her delicate palm, the horse fell to the ground as if it had hit a wall. The person on the horse also flew into the air and barely managed to twist his body in midair before falling into the shop next door. When the other riders saw the situation, they immediately surrounded the shop. One of them shouted toward the shop, "Xiaoyuan? Is something the matter?" After realizing that the horse was dead, someone shouted angrily at Lin Xiaola, "Although it's Ziyuan's fault for losing control of the horse, don't you think you've gone too far?" They clearly saw how Lin Xiaola killed the horse with one slap. To kill a galloping horse with one slap, one needed to be at least at the man-wheel level. However, to make the galloping horse stop moving as if it had hit a wall without moving at all was something that even their master couldn't do. Although this horse was a dwarf horse, it weighed 250 kilograms. Coupled with the impact of the galloping horse, even an intermediate man-wheel expert couldn't remain motionless. This girl, who looked much younger than them, was actually so highly skilled. This made them speak more politely to her. However, they weren't alone. There was still the Nine-Blade sect behind them, so they had to demand an explanation no matter what. "He was the one who hit me." After hearing her reply, Ren Baqin raised his head and said faintly, "My servant girl was afraid that he would hit me, so she used a little more force." "You are the servant girl. You are the servant girl." Lin Xiaola was immediately unhappy when she heard that. "If I'm not a servant girl, then what am I?" Ren Baqin asked. "Bodyguard." Lin Xiaola was very firm about her identity. A maid or a bodyguard? Ren Baqin held a lollipop in his hand. Lin Xiaola hesitated for a moment, but she still didn't give in. "Bodyguard." There was another one in Ren Baqin's hands. "Servant girl it is." Lin Xiaola smiled and grabbed the lollipop. The rest of the people watched him coax the child with a lollipop. It was hard to imagine that this girl, who could be easily bribed, was actually so skilled. "Sir, although I'm also at fault in this matter, don't you think you're going a little overboard? With your skills, you clearly could have dodged it, yet you wanted to kill my horse. Isn't this inexcusable? We are disciples of the Nine-Blade sect. Although we aren't a big sect, we can't let people bully us like this," the young man named Xiaoyuan said as he walked out of the shop with a dejected expression. "Speaking of which, I still want to ask you, why did it have to bump into us on such a wide road?" Ren Baqin squinted his eyes and looked over. "Naturally, the horse went out of control. This isn't something I can control. Otherwise this wouldn't have happened." The young man's eyes flickered. "What a coincidence." Ren Baqin laughed mischievously. "Why don't the two of you leave your names? It will be easier for us to explain today's incident when we return. After all, horses are precious." "This horse belongs to the sect and is very valuable," the young man said. "Names? Even if I tell you, you won't know. We are not from here and are not here to cause trouble. This thing is for you as compensation." Ren Baqin took out a dark green ball and threw it to the young man. "What's this?" The young man took it and looked at it carefully. It was a dark green ball with a raised lattice, a ring and a metal strip. "Good stuff. Its value is much higher than your horse's. As for its use, I can't tell you. After all, this thing isn't something you should have." Ren Baqin laughed, ignored them and left with Lin Xiaola. "Seniors, let them go." The young man held the ball in his hand and said, "That horse." One of them was somewhat unwilling. After all, a dwarf horse was considered precious to them. If they let them go just like that, they wouldn't be able to explain themselves when they returned. The 5 of them only had enough pocket money to buy one horse for a year. "He's an expert. Go back and tell master about this matter. I believe he won't blame us. After all, the horse that I was riding on went out of control. If there's any responsibility, I will bear it alone. There's no need to trouble senior brothers." The young man squeezed out a smile. After hearing what he said, everyone stopped talking. However, they were somewhat embarrassed. After all, they were from the same sect. What did he give you? Someone asked curiously. This ball looks quite exquisite. I wonder what it's used for. What's this metal strip? It looks like it's holding a handle. There's a ring? Pull it and see. Maybe it can open. The few of them gathered around to look at the ball that Rinpoche gave them. After all, even a bodyguard was such an expert. She was so young and pretty, although a little flat. Presumably, the identity of such a person wasn't ordinary. What he gave them wouldn't be ordinary either. Did you pull the ring down? Did you damage it? Let's see if we can open it. Maybe there's something inside. Boom. Hearing the explosion coming from behind, Rinpoche couldn't help but say, "Curiosity killed the cat." What did you give them? Lin Xiaola couldn't help but ask. If there were guards here, they would definitely know what Rinpoche gave them. However, she had been sleeping in the city and naturally didn't recognize a grenade. It's just a small thing. Punishing without teaching is torture. Lin Xiaola reiterated. There's no chance to punish them even if I wanted to, Rinpoche replied. Then he thought for a while and said, It seems like we're being targeted. Forget it. We have a rough idea of the situation here. Now that something like this has happened, we can't stay here anymore. Let's go to other cities to take a look. After all, it was an entrance city. It was too close to Gu City and couldn't come into contact with too many things. If he wanted to see more, he had to go deeper. Sir, why are you in such a hurry to leave? If we set off now, I'm afraid we will have to spend the night on the road. When the lady boss heard that Rinpoche wanted to check out, she was a little surprised. She didn't know what he had encountered outside. The public security here isn't very good. It's not suitable for me to stay. Rinpoche smiled. How can that be? The lady boss was even more surprised. Longzhou City's public security is famous. After all, there are so many merchants coming and going. If the public security wasn't good, there would have been chaos. Maybe the public security here has worsened after I came here, Rinpoche thought to himself, but didn't say it out loud. An hour later, the two of them sat in an ox cart and left the south gate. It's confirmed that it's him. Should we chase after him? A few people stood at the city gate and looked at the ox cart in front. Everyone else looked at the two people in front. Brother Lin, what do you think? The man at the front asked. There's no need to provoke him. That girl is at least an earthwheel expert. With such skills at such a young age, her background isn't simple, Lin Yuan said in a deep voice. It wasn't wise to provoke such a person just because of a subordinate's interference. Furthermore, even if we don't chase after him, the Nine-Blade sect won't let this matter rest, Lin Yuan added. Speaking of this matter, the man at the side felt a little distressed. After all, it wasn't easy to send a disciple into the Nine-Blade sect. After so many years, he had only sent 2 disciples in, and now one of them had died. Let's wait for the Nine-Blade sect to catch up and see what happens, the man at the front said. After all, this is Tianjin Basin, not the Yin Nation. These 2 guys were so ostentatious and injured someone. Yet they still want to leave. They are looking down on us. Lin Yuan remained silent. Looking up to him and looking down on him? That was a lie. The man in front was probably thinking about the Nine-Blade sect. After all, with such skills at such a young age, he definitely wasn't an ordinary person. He probably had a family or sect behind him. If they died here, the Nine-Blade sect would probably be the first place the other party would look for. The Nine-Blade sect had become more and more overbearing in recent years. It would be reassuring if 2 of those old fellows from the Nine-Blade sect died. Just for this reason alone, it was worth interfering. Chapter 435. It was already afternoon when they left the city. They didn't walk too far before the sky turned dark. It wasn't easy for him to find a forest. He parked the ox cart by the roadside and came back with some firewood. The roars of wild beasts could be heard in the forest. From time to time, they could also hear some rustling in the underbrush, but they couldn't see anything. There are only steamed buns left. Rinpoche took out some steamed buns from the carriage. These were taken from the hotel. After all, they were in a hurry to leave and it was good enough to have steamed buns to eat. Rinpoche sprinkled some salt and chili on the steamed buns until they were slightly charred. The taste was pretty good. A spicy sauce would be even better. After eating the steamed buns, the 2 of them lay on the grass and looked up at the sky, the mosquitoes buzzing in their ears. Slap. Rinpoche gave himself a slap and perished together with a large mosquito. Why is it only me? Ren Baqin felt that something was amiss. Lin Xiaola wasn't affected at all, but those mosquitoes were moving toward him. Who? Ren Baqin turned his head to look and saw a mosquito land on her face. Its proboscis pierced into her face, but it was as if it had pierced into a steel plate. The moment it came into contact with her face, the proboscis broke, and the remaining mosquito flew into the air with an aggrieved look on its face. His skin was so thick that it made others envious and jealous. Ren Baqin sighed and continued to lie there and look at the sky. The night sky of this world was filled with stars and was extremely beautiful. On Earth, he could see the beautiful night sky when he was young, but he couldn't see it anymore after he grew up. The dark sky hangs low accompanied by a sea of bright stars. The insects fly, the insects are flying. Ren Baqin smacked his lips and couldn't continue singing. He was already a mosquito. Mosquitoes fly, mosquitoes fly. The sound of horses galloping in the distance broke the silence of the night. Ren Baqin felt that he might have something to do if he traveled at night on a fast horse. In the afternoon he knew that someone would definitely chase after him, but it was a little slower than he expected. Wake up, there's work to do. I'll do it when I wake up. Lin Xiaola said in a daze. I can wait, but they probably can't. While the two of them were talking, the sound of horse hooves got closer. There were at least 6 or 7 horses. There's fire. There's someone in front. Based on the route, it's most likely them. Be careful. The few people on horseback saw the fire in the distance and immediately became spirited. They hurried and finally caught up. The other party had actually killed a few disciples of the Nine-Blade sect in Longzhou City. No matter what, they could not let him off. The sound of the horses' hooves stopped outside the range of the firelight. In the dark, they saw 2 people lying not far from the bonfire and immediately knew that they had found their targets. Sirs, I don't know how my Nine-Blade sect's disciples offended the 2 of you for you to use such a vicious method. Out of 5 of them, only 1 survived. Furthermore, he was seriously injured. In the future, even if he were to be cured, he would be crippled. Aren't the methods of the 2 of you too vicious? Do you think you can just leave after killing someone? 6 people walked out of the dark night. The first 2 were in their 50s or 60s, while the other 4 were in their 30s or 40s. They all had a capable aura about them. They are too ugly, Ren Baqin said without hesitation. Although the other party had provoked him first, the Nine-Blade sect was just a small sect in Ren Baqin's eyes. On the other hand, he was a member of the palace and was a secondary class, rank 4 official. If he wasn't out on a mission this time, he could simply transfer a team of guards to destroy the entire Nine-Blade sect. With such a huge gap, he naturally couldn't be bothered to explain to the people of the Nine-Blade sect. Furthermore, there was no need to explain. Was he supposed to say that the other party had deliberately offended him and reason with them? Ren Baqin couldn't be bothered to do such a thing. The people of the Nine-Blade sect had come with anger. The reason why they didn't make a move was because they saw the corpse of the horse and knew that the girl was an expert. Upon hearing Ren Baqin's words, they were even more furious. If they let the 2 of them go, the Nine-Blade sect would no longer be able to show its face in the future. Since you said so, there's no need to say anything more. Capture them and wait for the sect master to deal with them. One of them laughed angrily and didn't say anything else. He leaped into the air and pounced toward the 2 people. The others also surrounded them. Ren Baqin lay on the ground, held his pistol, and fired 3 consecutive shots at the figure in the air. After 3 consecutive gunshots, the person changed his position in the air and shouted, "Trying to hurt me with mere concealed weapons? You are looking down on the Nine-Blade sect." Along with this voice, a lotus flower formed by snow-white blade gleams bloomed in the air. When the person in the air saw that the 2 of them did not move, he relaxed. He thought to himself that the 2 of them were still young and had not seen much of the world. That young girl could kill a horse and was quite strong. However, when faced with a life-and-death battle, she was stunned. After capturing the 2 of them, he wanted to let them know that this was Tianjin Basin, not the Yun Nation. Not everyone could be arrogant and despotic here. The lives of those disciples would be repaid by the 2 of them with their lives. Lin Xiaola immediately rubbed her paws on her body. If they were previously judged as a Tom, Dick, or Harry, the people from the Nine-Blade sect would definitely fight to the death with the other party. However, after knowing that the other party was a spirit wheel expert, all these thoughts disappeared. Now, they were thinking about how to leave this place alive. Chapter 436. How should we deal with them? Lin Xiaola wiped the blood off her claws, ignored them, and turned to look at Ren Baqin. Rinpoche looked at the people around him. It was as if they were frozen in place and didn't dare to move. The man on the ground also stopped screaming for fear that his voice would attract Lin Xiaola's attention. With just one move, Lin Xiaola had only used one move, and the few people who had come with a menacing aura were trembling like quails, not daring to move at all. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts when they heard Lin Xiaola's words. They were afraid that the man would say, "Kill them." In the face of a spirit wheel expert, they didn't even have the chance to escape. There was no need to make a move. Just the title of a spirit wheel expert was enough to frighten them. "Sir, if there's anything I can do for you, I'll be at your beck and call." "I'll definitely do it properly," a man suddenly said. "Leave this one. As for the others." Rinpoche pointed at the man and muttered to himself. The first person who spoke was pretty good and had quick reflexes. Rinpoche was indeed lacking someone to follow him around. It didn't matter to him whether the others were killed or not. As long as most of the commoners were left behind, he didn't care about the lives of these practitioners. After he finished speaking, the first person immediately heaved a sigh of relief. "The night is long and I'm not in the mood to sleep. Let's play rock paper scissors. Those who win can leave and those who lose. The scenery here isn't bad and it's a good place to be buried. There are mountains on one side and water on the other, so you won't be lonely in the future," Rinpoche said after a slight pause. Upon hearing this, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Not only did they encounter a spirit wheel expert, but there was also a person who didn't follow common sense and acted based on his preferences. No matter who it was, they were afraid of meeting such a person who didn't follow common sense, especially when there was a spirit wheel expert by his side. "Sir, we were blind. Please let us live. As long as you have any instructions in the future, we won't say a word," another earth wheel expert said while suppressing his fear. At the same time he cursed his dead disciples. If it weren't for them, he wouldn't have encountered such a situation. "Please let us go. We were blind." The others also begged for mercy. "I didn't want to cause trouble, but you guys chased after me. Don't blame me. I've already given you a chance." Rinpoche was halfway through his sentence when a gust of wind blew past him. Lin Xiaola was gone. Rinpoche looked at the empty spot next to Lin Xiaola, who was originally standing beside him. Then he looked at the few man-wheel experts and 2 earth-wheel experts around him and felt that he had been F***ed. That simple-minded person actually abandoned her and disappeared. Moreover, he had thrown himself into the crowd and disappeared, surrounded by enemies. Rinpoche's expression did not change in the slightest. It was precisely at this moment that he couldn't panic, reveal his cowardice, and let the other party see through him. Sneaking a glance at the few people opposite him, he saw the eyes of the person who had just spoken start to emit an ominous glint. That person was also one of the 2 earth-wheel experts. The others were also getting restless, but they didn't want to capture him. Instead, they wanted to escape. Just now, Rinpoche was still thinking about how to deal with them. In the blink of an eye, the situation had changed, and that spirit wheel expert had actually disappeared. How could others not be tempted by such an opportunity? The only thing that made everyone hesitate was what was going on right now. Where did that spirit wheel expert go? If he ran away and was caught, his fate would be even worse. Or should they capture the person in front of them? Just as everyone was hesitating, Rinpoche faintly said, "A person can be weak and have low martial arts skills, but he must have a good brain. Your martial arts skills are low and your brains aren't good either. It hasn't been easy for you to survive until now. However, if you want to continue living, you won't live for long even if I don't kill you." Rinpoche's brain worked rapidly as he spoke. At this moment, whether or not he could delay the few people opposite him depended on his eloquence. If the other party saw that he was guilty, they would probably make a move immediately. By the time Lin Xiaola returned, he would have already fallen into their hands. At that time, his life and death would no longer be in his hands. However, he couldn't force them too harshly. Otherwise, they would immediately take the risk out of desperation and he would be unlucky. The only thing he could rely on now was that the other party didn't know his actual strength. He had to use his words to stall for time. "Sir, what do you mean by this?" Everyone's attention was immediately attracted by Rinpoche's words. The 2 earth wheel experts who were originally ready to make a move, were shocked when they heard this. "Dayo is currently at war, yet you guys are still restless. As far as I know, Dayo can no longer tolerate you guys and is preparing to bathe Tianjin Basin in blood. All of you, including your families, must die. However, you guys still don't know it." Rinpoche sneered. Rinpoche's words shocked everyone again. Even the 2 earth wheel experts couldn't care less about anything else. Even though the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation and the Aboriginals were in the same nation, they were like fire and water. It wouldn't be a day or two before the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation wanted to leave this basin. Everyone knew after birth that the vast land outside belonged to them in the past, but now they could only hide in this basin. Under such circumstances, the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation naturally had many tricks up their sleeves. Shiwanya, the Protectorate of the South's Protectorate of the South, would seize the slightest hint of this situation and kill everyone. This made even more people resentful, and some people were worried that the Aboriginals would come in one day and kill everyone. Under such worries, they wanted to leave this basin even more and control their lives in their own hands. At this moment, when they heard Rinpoche say what they were most worried about, everyone couldn't care less about anything else. How did Sir know? An earth wheel expert hurriedly asked. Right now he couldn't care less about the other party and escape. One had to know that Rinpoche's words involved all the people in Tianjin Basin, even if they had families. That's why I'm here, Rinpoche said faintly. Everyone wanted to ask more questions, but a figure suddenly appeared among them. Lin Xiaola was standing there carrying two people in her hands. Seeing that Lin Xiaola had returned, Rinpoche heaved a sigh of relief. Even though it had only been 2 minutes, it was enough for him to die several times over. However, now wasn't the time to talk about this. Who is this? They were peeping in the forest just now. Lin Xiaola threw the two people to the ground. Their faces were scratched one after another. Lin Xiaola raised her head and looked at Rinpoche with hopeful eyes, as if she was asking for credit and a reward. Rinpoche was exasperated that she didn't live up to his expectations. She threw him aside and ran to catch people? You have to remember your identity. You are a bodyguard, a bodyguard, a bodyguard. If there weren't outsiders around, he would have taught her what a bodyguard was. Dead Toad? Lin Yuan? Those people from the Nine Blades sect exclaimed when they saw the two of them. You can even recognize this? Rinpoche looked down and saw that the two people were beyond recognition. Why did Lin Xiaola love scratching people's faces so much? Chapter 437. Death Toad? Is it that gang from Longzhou City? Rinpoche had heard of the Death Toad when he was in Longzhou City, so he immediately thought of it when he heard the name. He didn't know why these two people followed him here. Yes, these two are the chief and deputy chief of the Death Toad. Sir, what you said just now was a lie, right? A trembling voice asked. Normally, the people from the Nine Blades sect would definitely want to know why these two people were following them. However, they were more concerned about what Rinpoche said just now. One had to know that what Rinpoche said just now was simply too important to them. If Dao really wanted to use their troops in Tianjin Basin, they were afraid that blood would flow in this cage eventually. Other than a few experts who could escape by climbing over the surrounding mountains and cliffs, the rest had nowhere to run. Now they only hoped that Rinpoche was lying to them and completely threw aside the fact that Rinpoche wanted to take their lives just now. Lie to you? Is there a need for me to do that? Rinpoche sneered. Tianjin Basin was now like psoriasis to Dao. If one day the Empress no longer cared about the original agreement and wanted to slaughter these remnant citizens of the Hao Nation, he reckoned that the entire imperial court would raise their hands in approval. Dao had never learned how to appease people, and it had never been a country that paid attention to etiquette and benevolence. To them, killing was the most convenient thing. Hearing what Rinpoche said, the people from the Nine Blades sect were speechless and had an ugly look on their faces. Sir, you are here for... Just now, Rinpoche had said that he was here for this matter. Furthermore, with a spirit wheel expert by his side, it increased the persuasiveness of his words. I am here for this matter. Consider it as giving you a chance to live, Rinpoche said faintly. If he didn't make this trip, the lives of these remnant citizens of the Hao Nation would depend on the Empress's mood. However, in his eyes, these remnant citizens of the Hao Nation were still somewhat useful. After all, the Aboriginals were too boorish and their brains were filled with muscles. A country couldn't only know how to fight wars. If he wanted to use some other people, these remnant citizens of the Hao Nation would be a better choice. After all, even if the Yun Nation was conquered in the future, the resistance of the people of the Yun Nation that had just been conquered would probably be even more intense. In contrast, these remnant citizens of the Hao Nation had been under the rule of Dao for so many years, and the rule of the Aboriginals was deeply ingrained in their bones. This could be seen from the fact that they only dared to make small moves in private and didn't dare to rise up in revolt. Therefore, these remnant citizens of the Hao Nation were more useful. Originally, the life and death of these people didn't matter to him, but after seeing their reactions after listening to his words, he changed his mind. It would be better to reveal his identity and make those who were obedient stay behind. With them at his beck and call, he would be able to avoid a lot of trouble during his trip to Tianjin Basin. At the very least, there wouldn't be another incident like what happened in Longzhou City. If they did well, it would be fine to keep them. In any case, he would definitely need people. So it turns out that Milord has come for this matter. We were rash before, I hope Milord does not take offense. Rinpoche nodded slightly. These words were pleasing to the ears. On account of your tactful behavior, Rinpoche said halfway through his sentence, but everyone understood what he was implying. I was indeed rash. It turns out that we are a family. Rinpoche? Who's a family with you? Don't you have any shame? The Empress and I are a family. Milord, even if we want to resist, we don't have enough weapons. Currently, Tianjin Basin is filled with bone knives. Back then, when we came here, the knives and spears were melted down and reforged into kitchen knives. Now most people here use bone knives. Although they can be sharpened, the aboriginals are strong and heavy. Furthermore, they are wielding steel knives. After a few collisions, the bone knives will break. Therefore, we have always been powerless to resist. Is Milord here with the intention of helping us? Rinpoche? Did this group of people misunderstand something? Are you asking me for weapons to rebel? May I know which family in the Yin nation you are from? Or are you sent by the imperial court? Rinpoche, someone from Great Xia came a month ago and is currently in the valley. At that time he said that the Yin nation would definitely help us. Now that Milord is here, there is such a misunderstanding. If we have Milord's help, our chances of success will be much higher. There are only 3 spirit wheel experts in the Protectorate of the South. With the spirit wheel expert from Great Xia and Milord's companion, it is enough to restrain or even defeat them. The only thing missing now is the weapon. Rinpoche finally came to his senses. Did this group of people think that he was sent by the Yin nation to help them resist? Thinking back, he did say that he was from the Yin nation. After all, he and Lin Xiaola didn't look like aboriginals. The aboriginals had never used outsiders before him, so they didn't suspect this. In addition, Lin Xiaola was a spirit wheel expert, and he said that he was here to help them. It was no wonder that there was such a misunderstanding. However, this misunderstanding was a good opportunity. According to him, someone from Great Xia was here too? Or was it a spirit wheel expert? Great Xia wasn't going to stop and wasn't ready to give up. From what they said, it seemed like they were going to make a big move. Needless to say, as long as he followed their words, he might even be able to infiltrate the enemy. At the very least, he knew that they were preparing something big. When the time came, he could inform Shiwanya and get rid of them. After getting rid of these people who were up to no good, it would be much easier to deal with the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation. After thinking for a while, Rinpoche immediately came up with an idea. You don't have the right to know my identity. You just need to know that I'm here to help you, Rinpoche said faintly and put on airs. In fact, after seeing his posture, this group of people was even more convinced. This was because the people from Great Xia had the same attitude. Regardless of whether it was the people from Great Xia or the Yin nation, they looked at them as if they were looking at stray dogs. It was normal for them to be arrogant. Where is that person from Great Xia now? Rinpoche asked. He went to the Golden Ring residence previously. His current location isn't something we know. Although the Nine-Blade sect was considered pretty good in the vicinity of Longzhou City, it was only a small sect in the entire Tianjin Basin. Naturally, they wouldn't know too much. Consider yourselves lucky. If not for the fact that I still need your help this time, none of you will be able to go back after attacking me. Everyone was drenched in cold sweat. They were really lucky to be able to escape with their lives after attacking a spirit wheel expert. When they returned, they would definitely offer incense to the patriarch. Rinpoche muttered to himself, "Leave 2 people behind to guide me. The rest of you can go back. Sir, I'll stay behind." The one who spoke was the rather quick-witted man from before. Previously, before everyone could react, he was the first to surrender. At this moment, he was the first to do so. He also had his own thoughts. Previously, he did it to survive, but now he wanted to hug Rinpoche's thigh. As long as he hugged Rinpoche's thigh, even if the rebellion against the aboriginals failed in the future, he might still be brought away. Furthermore, when the war started, he wouldn't be sent as cannon fodder to the front lines. Sir, I'll also stay behind to guide you. If there's any trouble, I'll be able to solve it for you. The other person who spoke was the Earth Wheel expert who hadn't made a move since the beginning. His thoughts were similar. Although an Earth Wheel expert had a higher status, it also depended on which sect he was from. The 2 of you stay behind. The rest of you can get lost. Bring the 2 people on the ground with you as well. Rinpoche waved his hand. He couldn't be bothered with why those 2 people followed him. There were already more important things to do. Everyone looked at each other, cupped their fists toward Rinpoche, and left with their heads lowered. Only an old earth wheel expert and a man wheel expert from the 9-Blade sect were left standing there obediently. Rinpoche stretched his back and said to the 2 people in front of him, "I don't know much about the situation here. This time I'm only here because I received orders. Tell me what you know." He didn't expect to encounter such a situation as soon as he entered Tianjin Basin. He was really lucky. Chapter 438. A few disciples from the 9-Blade sect tied the Death Toad and Lin Yuan to their horses and left under the cover of the night. Along the way, everyone looked at these 2 people from time to time. If they were killed, the Death Toad would be finished. If they were to make a move now, no one would know. That person from the Yun Nation would probably not care about such a small matter. I'm afraid there will be a war in the future. At least the 2 of them are a fighting force. In the end, the Earth Wheel Elder whose face was scratched by Lin Xiao sighed, and everyone gave up on this idea. In the wilderness on both sides of the road, a man and a woman hid in the dark and watched this group of people pass by with suspicious expressions. How did that coward Lin Yuan end up in the hands of the 9-Blade sect? A woman asked in a languid voice. Are they chasing after the 2 people you mentioned? The man asked. Most likely, but the situation is a little strange. Are we still going? I'm afraid there's a problem. Go back and find out where the 2 people from the 9-Blade sect went. After daybreak, Rinpoche and the others headed toward the Golden Ring residence. It would normally take 4 days to travel from Longzhou City to Jiaisai City, but it took them 5 days. Along the way, Rinpoche obtained a lot of useful information from the 2 people from the 9-Blade sect. They knew a lot more than what Rinpoche had inquired about previously. After all, there were many things that these sects knew but ordinary people didn't. The division of power in Tianjin Basin was much more complicated than what he knew from Shiwanya. There were more than a dozen powers and hundreds of sects, big and small. Their relationships were intricate and chaotic. However, there was also an alliance behind them that had been contacting all sides to prepare for an uprising. This alliance was led by 3 major powers and 8 major sections. Among them, the 3 major factions were the 3 biggest factions in Tianjin Basin, and they controlled almost all the cities in Tianjin Basin. They were the North Alliance, the Southern Metropolis, and the Green Bellflower. Among them, the North Alliance was the most powerful, followed by the Southern Metropolis, and the Green Bellflower was the smallest. However, the internal structure of these 3 powers was also complicated. One of the 8 major sects was the Golden Ring residence. Its sphere of influence covered 6 cities, not the 3 that Rinpoche had heard before. The Golden Ring residence was the smallest of the 8 major sections. The largest one was called the Spiritual Mountain sect. It was the largest sect in the Northern Alliance. Its sphere of influence encompassed close to 20 cities. Many of the generals in the Northern Alliance came from the Spiritual Mountain sect. In addition, among these 8 big sects, there was one that Rinpoche found rather interesting. It was called the Mengsing Pavilion, and it was located within the territory of the Green Bellflower. It was said that all the members of the pavilion were women, and one of the pavilion masters was called Qingling. From this name, one could guess the relationship between the 2 parties. Along the way, Rinpoche felt more than once that these 2 people from the 9-Blade sect were really stupid. They didn't even have the slightest bit of suspicion towards him. They didn't even know his exact identity before telling him everything they knew. However, thinking about it, it was probably because the ancient race had never had any outsiders before. The ancient race and the other races were mutually exclusive. The 2 of them had never doubted that they would stand on the side of the ancient race. In addition, they were too desperate for outside support. They wanted to get out of this cage and take back their original land. At the thought of this, he felt that they were rather pitiful. Although he was pitiful, he could not pity him. There was no right or wrong between the 2 sides. It was just that their positions were different and they were enemies. After walking like this for 5 days, everyone finally arrived at GCI City, where the Golden Ring residence was located. After arriving, everyone first found an inn. The Earth Wheel experts from the 9-Blade sect went to the Golden Ring residence to deliver the visiting card, while Rinpoche took Lin Xiaola for a stroll in GCI City. GCI City was much bigger and more prosperous than Longzhou City. The streets were considered well organized. The lives of the ordinary people here were slightly better than in Longzhou City. At the very least they looked better. Their clothes were still very old, but they were considered clean and didn't have many patches. However, they were only slightly better off. The ordinary people were still considered sallow and emaciated. In general, after visiting these two cities, Rinpoche roughly understood the living conditions of the remnant citizens of the Hao nation. Poverty had always surrounded them, and having a full stomach was probably their biggest wish. In addition, what attracted Rinpoche was the various shops on both sides of the street. Whether it was daily necessities like salt or cloth, the prices here were 50% higher than in Lan City. In addition to those common shops, there were also many unique shops. For example, a bone grinder shop specialized in sharpening bone knives, arrowheads, and other weapons. Rinpoche specially went in for a walk and finally bought a bone knife. This kind of bone knife had a very sharp edge and was almost as sharp as an iron knife. Its biggest flaw was its hardness and toughness, which couldn't be compared to iron products. If it were to be chopped by an iron knife, cracks would appear after a few hits. Some bones had good toughness and hardness and could be made into knives that could be used for a long time. However, these were very expensive and weren't affordable for ordinary people. Is that the disciple of the Golden Ring residents? Rinpoche raised his chin at the back of a figure in the crowd in the distance. From where he stood, he could see the other party. He was carrying a long bone knife with a row of 9 golden rings on the back of it. When walking, the golden rings would make a crisp sound when they hit the back of the bone knife. Previously, Rinpoche had heard from them that these golden rings were made using a special method. When wielding the bone knife, these golden rings would make an ear-piercing sound that would interfere with the other party's 5 senses and easily make the other party impatient. If one were to fight with a disciple of the Golden Ring residents under the sun, not only would one have to be careful of being disturbed by these golden rings, but they would also have to be careful of the reflection of the light. The Golden Ring residents had a unique technique. When wielding the knife, these golden rings would reflect the sunlight and form countless light fragments that would interfere with the other party's vision. With their ears and eyes disrupted by light, it would be difficult for even a level 1 Golden Ring resident's disciple to deal with them. "Yes, sir," the 9-blade sect disciple replied. The 9-blade sect disciple replied. This person's name was Lu Xing, and the Earth Wheel elder was called Lu Changmei. While Rinpoche was strolling around the city, the Empress was sitting in the garden in a daze. Without that person by her side, these days were getting more and more boring. She wasn't even interested in watching television. Sure enough, it was more interesting when he was around. In the past, she had always been alone and didn't feel anything. However, after having someone by her side, it was especially easy to feel lonely. "Has there been any news from him?" the Empress asked without raising her head. "Your Majesty, Sir Rin didn't bring the radio with him this time?" Qing Yuan whispered behind her. After that, she turned her head and stuck out her tongue at Hong Luan. Her eyes were full of smiles as she thought, Sir Rin has only been gone for a few days and Her Majesty already misses him. The Empress sat for a long time before getting up and walking to the candy tree. The candy on the tree was already 1/3 gone. At that time, Rinpoche had solemnly vowed that he would return after finishing the candy. The Empress picked up a pair of scissors and cut off another piece of candy. When she looked again, there was only half of it left. "If he doesn't return after finishing the candy, I will tie him up and hang him on the tree." The Empress raised her eyebrows and thought to herself. She heard that there were 23 ways to tie someone up. She could try all of them. Chapter 439. When Rinpoche returned to the inn, he saw a few short-legged horses at the entrance and a few disciples of the Golden Ring sect with bone knives on their backs standing there. The surrounding pedestrians carefully avoided them and didn't dare to approach. The bustling street highlighted these people. The Golden Ring residence was extremely powerful locally. Even the warlord of Thorn City had to be courteous to them, let alone ordinary people who naturally stayed far away. Upon seeing Rinpoche and Lin Xiaola, they sized them up, and one of the disciples cupped his hands and asked, "Are you, sir, from the Yun nation?" "Yes." Rinpoche nodded. "Our elder is waiting for you in the inn," the disciple said respectfully. Rinpoche nodded and strode into the inn. Someone inside had already heard the commotion outside. He walked out with large strides and said in a clear voice, "Young master, you must be from the Yun nation. It must have been a long journey." Rinpoche looked up. It was a man of about 40 years old. He was thin, had sharp eyebrows, a gentle attitude, and exuded a steady charm. On Earth, even if he was 40 years old, there would be plenty of women who would fight for him. He was only slightly less handsome than Rinpoche. I'm Ling Ziquan, an elder of the Golden Ring residence in charge of external affairs. Greetings, sir. There's no need for formalities. You should be clear about my purpose for coming here, Rinpoche said faintly. I've heard a little about it. This isn't a place to entertain guests, and we have neglected you by staying here. Arrangements have been made, so please move over and let the Golden Ring residents play the host, Ling Ziquan said with a smile. All right. Rinpoche nodded slightly. He knew that entering the Golden Ring residence was just the beginning. Although this person's attitude was respectful, it wasn't as respectful as the people from the Nine-Blade sect. After all, this was the difference between a large and a small sect, and he reckoned that it wouldn't be as easy to fool as the people from the Nine-Blade sect. He had to pass the test of the Golden Ring residence before he could come into contact with more things. If he was exposed, he was afraid that Lin Xiaola would have to escape with him. One had to know that there was a spirit wheel expert in the Golden Ring residence. There were a total of 13 famous spirit wheel experts in the entire Tianjing basin. Each of the 8 major sects had one, and the largest sect, Lingshan, had 2. However, even though there were 13 spirit wheel experts, these remnant citizens of the Hao nation still didn't dare to act rashly. At the same level, the aboriginal experts who had reached the cardinal heaven level were too terrifying, and the spirit wheel experts in Tianjing basin could only rank in the bottom half of the spirit wheel experts. Previously, when Great Xia attacked Ziyue City, 7 spirit wheel experts besieged Xiongyu, the deputy protector general of the Protectorate of the North. Xiongyu died, and 2 of Great Xia's spirit wheel experts died in battle. The protector general of the South, Shi Wanya, was stronger than Xiongyu. Together with the other 2 cardinal heaven experts, the 13 spirit wheel experts didn't dare to act rashly. As a result, these remnant citizens of the Hao nation needed weapons and spirit wheel experts for external support. Rinpoche was now a citizen of the Yun nation and had a spirit wheel expert as his bodyguard. As such, he was naturally treated with the highest level of respect. Everyone left the city and headed towards the most eye-catching mountain peak in the northwest direction. When they got closer, they saw that there were layers of pavilions and pavilions from the foot of the mountain to the waist of the mountain. The buildings were vaguely visible among the trees. Although the Golden Ring residence was a sect, its location was the size of a small town. When they got closer, they could see a mountain gate in front of them. On both sides, there were stone walls that were 3 meters tall that enclosed the entire Golden Ring residence. Only the eaves were exposed. In front of the mountain gate, 4 disciples stood on both sides. They were all wearing yellow shirts and brown pleated skirts with bone knives on their backs. A group of people hurriedly walked out of the mountain gate and welcomed Rinpoche and the others. First, they exchanged conventional greetings. The person who came was the chief of the Golden Ring residence, Zhan Changkong. He looked to be around 60 years old and had a dignified appearance. Behind him was his wife, who looked to be in her early 30s. She had a graceful figure and was extremely beautiful. However, Rinpoche had heard from the people of the Nine-Blade sect about some famous characters in the Golden Ring residence. He knew that this person was already over 40 years old and was a famous beauty when she was young. She was known as the Painting Fairy, and it was said that her painting skills were superb. In addition to the 2 of them, there were also the 2 inner deacons, the law enforcement deacon, and the outer deacon beside him. Out of the 6 deacons in the residence, 4 appeared. After all, Rinpoche was an envoy from the Yun nation, and they had no choice but to treat him seriously. Even without mentioning Rinpoche's identity, Lin Xiaola's strength as a spirit wheel expert was enough for them to treat her this way. Young master, you have another companion. Is she in the carriage? After the conventional greetings, Zhan Changkong asked. He was still very curious about this spirit wheel expert. He heard that this person was only a young lady, but she was already at the spirit wheel level. He was afraid that there would be another person like Qi Zixiao and Li Yuanzhu in the future. Rinpoche turned his head and opened the curtains. Indeed, Lin Xiaola was sleeping soundly inside. She had really let go of herself during these 2 trips with him. She was even more so than when she was in Qingxin Palace Hall. Rinpoche didn't say anything. He took out a piece of milk candy and threw it into his mouth. After chewing it twice, he blew on Lin Xiaola. Then Lin Xiaola lay there with her eyes closed, sniffled and swam toward him. Looking at her salted posture, Rinpoche really wanted to take off his shoes and stretch out his feet without saying anything. If he remembered correctly, Lin Xiaola's sense of smell was much more sensitive than that of ordinary people. However, it was a little inhumane to do so, so he eventually gave up on this tempting idea. It was mainly because Rinpoche was afraid that she would scratch him out of anger. Count to 3. Otherwise I will throw this candy away. Rinpoche took out a piece of candy and slowly unwrapped it. 3. Rinpoche turned around and threw the candy into the distance. A gust of wind blew past Rinpoche. Lin Xiaola appeared in the air, grabbed the white rabbit creamy candy, threw it into her mouth and questioned him, "What about 1 and 2? Do you even know how to count?" Rinpoche felt that it was really embarrassing to be questioned by someone from Dayo like this. Everyone looked at Rinpoche teasing the spirit wheel expert like he was teasing a pet. They couldn't believe that this was the spirit wheel expert. However, when she came out of the carriage to catch the candy, she displayed her agility and speed. Everyone had to admit that she was indeed a spirit wheel expert. In everyone's impression, spirit wheel experts were either dignified, arrogant, or otherworldly. At least this was what they knew. For example, it was rare to see the great elder in the sect even once a month. Most of the time, he would only practice hard in the mountains or climb over the cliffs around the basin to search for medicinal herbs. Every time they met, he would only say a few words. In their minds, this was how a spirit wheel expert should be. Lin Xiaola was too different from the spirit wheel experts that they knew. However, after carefully sizing her up, she looked to be about 16 or 17 years old. Her body hadn't matured yet, her hair was tied up in a simple bun, and her face was delicate and pretty. In a few years she might even become a beauty. She was wearing a silk tube top and a short skirt, which was somewhat similar to how the Aboriginals dressed. However, perhaps this was the current trend in the Yun Nation? After taking a closer look at Lin Xiaola's appearance, everyone suffered another blow. Thinking about how they were already so old and hadn't even crossed the path to heaven, they felt that they had wasted their years. They had to admit that there were indeed geniuses in this world. "I'm Zhan Changkong. Please." Zhan Changkong sorted out his emotions and introduced himself. Seeing that Lin Xiaola didn't seem to care, he gestured to Rinpoche. Rinpoche and Zhan Changkong walked side by side while Lin Xiaola stared at the bag of candy hanging from Rinpoche's neck. Her gaze swayed along with the candy bag. Painting Fairy wanted to chat with her, but she didn't know her temperament. Seeing that her attention was focused on the person in front of her, she gave up on the idea. However, she thought to herself that she didn't know what was so special about this man from the Yun Nation that such a genius would favor him so much that she couldn't bear to let go of him. If Rinpoche knew what she was thinking, he would laugh like crazy. Chapter 440. Where are you two from? How should I address you? Wang Jing, my surname is Yi. Call me Yi Yunxian. Rinpoche made up a random name. He didn't know much about the Yun Nation and only knew of 2 places. One was the capital of the Yun Nation, Wangjing, and the other was Qingfeng City. As for the culprit, she only knew of one person, Yi Ku, the warlord of Qingfeng City. That fellow had the audacity to rob her of a batch of silver, and the empress had already arranged for his entire family to be exterminated. After all, he was only pretending to be a Yun Nation merchant at the beginning. He didn't do much research on the various aspects of the Yun Nation. He didn't expect that a freak combination of factors would lead to the current situation. Wild cloud immortal, overflowing with immortal chi. What a good name, Painting Fairy praised. Previously, the 2 of you from the Nine-Blade sect did not speak in detail. I wonder if Mr. Yi could tell us the detailed purpose of your visit? External Warden Ling Ziquan asked. His question was also what everyone wanted to ask. This was what everyone wanted to know the most at the moment. At this moment, everyone was in the middle of the banquet. 17 glowing pearls hung in the air. The light was very good and soft, not dazzling at all. It was also not as oppressive as the lamps. The entire hall was brightly lit. Rinpoche looked at it enviously. This wasn't an ordinary night luminescent pearl. Night luminescent pearls weren't this bright. This thing was almost as bright as a 40-watt light bulb. It could definitely be considered a treasure. At the highest table were Zhan Changkong and Painting Fairy. Slightly below them were Rinpoche and Lin Xiaola. Further below them were the 2 people from the Nine-Blade sect. Opposite him were the 6 great deacons of the Golden Ring residence. At this time he finally saw all of them. We have the same enemy. As he spoke, he glanced at Lin Xiaola from the corner of his eye and saw that she was setting up a tower. She piled up the candies that Rinpoche had just given her, took out a piece from the pile and scattered it all over the place. Everyone nodded in agreement. The Aboriginals were indeed their common enemy. They occupied your homes and forced you to live and reproduce in such a place. Most of you will never be able to take a step out of here. Like a bird in a cage. A mournful look appeared on everyone's face. Rinpoche's words struck a chord in their hearts. No one was willing to be kept like a caged bird here, even if this place was so big that most ordinary people wouldn't be able to walk around it in their entire lives. That did not hide the fact that they were being held here. The vast and boundless world outside was what they yearned for. This is the best chance you've had in years. Deo has just had a war with Great Xia and is now at war with us. They have almost no time to care about other things. Rinpoche asked. I don't have much time to waste here. Mr. Yi, you must be tired from the long journey. After tonight's banquet, we will send someone to send you there tomorrow. The journey will take 8 to 9 days. Let's toast to Mr. Yi first. No matter what, you are our friend. Zhan Changkong raised his wine cup and toasted him from afar. Cheers. Rinpoche drank it in one gulp. His eyes moved slightly. The taste of this wine was unexpectedly good. Even though the alcohol content wasn't high, it was sweet and palatable. There was also a kind of plant fragrance. After drinking this cup of wine, he felt refreshed and the tiredness from the continuous days of travel had dissipated. Mr. Yi should have never drunk this wine before. After brewing, this wine has to be stored in the trunk of a hanging tree for a year before being sealed in a mud jar for 3 years. The wine that Mr. Yi drinks is produced from a 1,000-year-old hanging tree. Every year less than 50 liters are brewed. Even I can't bear to drink it. Indeed, it's not bad. Rinpoche nodded. He finally found a good point about the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation. This wine was brewed rather well. In the future he could gather a group of people to specialize in brewing wine. Come. Zhan Changkong clapped his hands again. 16 young girls around 16 years old entered the hall. 8 of them held musical instruments and stood at the side. The other 8 girls held ribbons in their hands and danced in the room. As the girls danced, their graceful figures were faintly discernible under the light muslin. Their ribbons fluttered in the air, attracting Rinpoche's attention. He had to admit that the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation were much better than the Aboriginals in this aspect. The dance of the Aboriginals was full of primitive wildness. Even though it was interesting to watch it occasionally, it wasn't as suitable and aesthetically pleasing as the dance of the young girls in the hall. In particular, one of the young girls exuded the vitality of a young girl from head to toe. Her skin was fair, her appearance was excellent, and every frown and smile was extremely attractive. Compared to the 2 outstanding girls that he had seen in this world, her appearance wasn't inferior at all. The most attractive thing was her eyes. They were clear and full of curiosity, as if she was a young girl who didn't know about the world. Rinpoche found a second good point about the remnant citizens of the Hao Nation. When the time comes, he could gather a group of them and dance in the palace when he had nothing to do. Well, he also had to get those 17 pearls on his head back. Zhan Changkong paid attention to Rinpoche's expression. Seeing that Rinpoche was fond of them, he smiled and said, If Mr. Yi likes them, I can make the decision to gift them to you. I only hope that you will treat them well in the future. Residence Chief? The rest of the people were immediately shocked. The rest of the 8 girls didn't matter, but one of them was the residence chief's youngest daughter. She was usually treated like a treasure by the residence chief. She actually appeared among these people. This was enough to shock everyone. However, Zhan Changkong's words were even more shocking. Everyone looked at Painting Fairy, but realized that she didn't seem to have heard anything. Zhan Changkong looked at Rinpoche with a smile in his eyes. There was also a tinge of anticipation in his eyes. He thought to himself, no matter what, there will be a battle in the future. If they won, it would be fine. If they lost, I'm afraid that not many people would survive. In particular, Deo wouldn't let people like the Golden Ring residents stay. Even though sending Kaisian away didn't sound good, it was an opportunity for her. Even if she lost, she could still survive. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.